today. We're missing a couple of people, but we can get started. And we're going to go directly into executive session for about half an hour, and then we'll start the public meeting at 8:30. So I would call for a motion for the board to go into executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA Section 4056A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and consideration and discussion of appointments, employment, and duties. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Doak, seconded by, did I hear Trustee Donnelly's voice?
I think it was Trevor.
Trevor, okay. Trustee Eustace. All in favor, please. Well, clerk will call the roll.
Jim Irwin,
Yes?
Kelly Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Doak,
Yes.
Trustee Eames,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Tim,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Emily, on mute.
There.
Trustee Kane. I think you're on mute.
I don't know if she could hear us.
Yeah, I don't think she can hear.
Okay, I'll come back to her. Trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
yes, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Macon,
Yes.
Trustee Nishu,
Yes.
Trustee Eustace,
Yes.
and we'll go back to Trustee Kane
Collins.
and Trustee Collins.
Yes.
He's unmuted.
Trustee Kane, can you hear us? Okay, I'll text her.
Okay.
Did I miss anyone?
Yep, Trish is here.
Oh, sorry, Trish, thank you.
And I just texted Emily to unmute and she said she did, so I don't know.
I'm here. No, I'm sorry. Maybe my volume was down or something.
Oh, great, you can hear us, Emily?
I've been here the whole time. Yeah, no, I think my volume was just down. I apologize. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
More
Thank
coffee, Emily, more coffee.
you. Clearly.
Does she want to vote?
Do you want to vote, Emily?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries, and we are now in executive session.
Just turn it over to Robert.
Wait for everybody to join.
Oh.
Hi.
She's not gonna let me in.
Hold on. Come on, Mama.
And what do you do about the student who's at the rec center
Okay, thank
every
you.
day?
You're welcome.
Sorry about that. No, it just didn't look like you guys had moved over,
Right.
so.
Student
I didn't press the buttons.
Or the student
Does it
performing
give
artist.
you a screen like when
They
you
got,
normally?
they
Is
got
it?
the shaft.
Okay,
Let's
I
face
wasn't,
it,
I've
not-
never been
not
in
from
here when it
university,
happened,
COVID.
so.
They lost out on
I
it.
think it did, and
Intricacies
then
of
it was
why
only
they're
up
here.
for a couple
Yep.
of seconds.
But So good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting of the Board of Trustees of University of Maine System to order. And welcome, everyone. I have some housekeeping to take care of quickly in terms of things that need to be read because of the use of technology. So let me start with that. First of all, Governor Mills has issued a special directive allowing the University of Maine System Board of Trustees to meet via technology due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as long as roll call votes are taken for each action item. The trustees participating by technology will be counted towards a quorum to confirm trustee attendance and to ensure the trustees are able to clearly hear and understand the proceedings and each other. The clerk will take the roll call for the members of the board.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Here.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Doak,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Present.
Commissioner Macon,
Yes.
trustee Eustace,
Present.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Present.
trustee Riley,
Here?
trustee Tim.
Here.
All trustees except for trustee Gardner are present.
Okay, thank you. So next item is the YouTube streaming. To let everyone know, the board meeting is being streamed live to YouTube with closed captioning available. To assist the captionist, please remember to mute your Zoom connection unless you are speaking. And now, first order of business on the agenda is citizen comment. We have 11 folks who have signed up for citizen comment. And I know that, or I believe that 10 of these relate to the retiree health issue. So for those folks in particular, as well as for anyone who's attending, I want to let you know that the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, Ryan Lowe, will be speaking to this issue when we get to his portion of the agenda. And to make sure you can access that, you need to switch to the YouTube streaming after you've moved off the Zoom, the connection for the citizen comment. So please do that. And with that, I'm going to start the ball rolling. Our first speaker is James Gallagher. Good morning, Mr. Gallagher. If you're there, Mr. Gallagher, we're not hearing you. All right, well, let's
And if
go
they're
on to the
calling in
second
on the
one.
phone, if they're calling in on the phone, they may have to unmute themselves, right? Which is usually like *6, I think. It just, if the comments by phone, they may automatically be muted in the Zoom.
That's not correct because they're not calling into the Zoom number.
Right,
It's hard to- I
they're
can't-
calling into a conference line, not the Zoom.
Okay, great.
So let's go to the, yes?
Can I just ask a quick question? How do you access the YouTube? Is there a connection code or,
Ellen?
hello?
Yes, you can access the YouTube by the Board of Trustees website. There is a direct link.
Oh, thank you.
This is James Gallagher. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Gallagher. Good morning.
I'm sorry, we suddenly got shut off. That's why I'm late in coming back. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay.
We're just,
I'm James Gallagher, and
just want to mention, I'm sorry, for you and everyone else, that it's we have a 3-minute timer going here. So if you hear a beep, that's what that means.
I am James Gallagher, and I'm here to communicate to you my reaction to the new retirees health plan rated by the system administration and you. I feel a deep sense of betrayal by you and the university. The plan is damaging to me and to a very large number of retirees and future retirees. It must be changed. I began serving on the faculty of the sociology department in 1971. I took early retirement from the department in 2001. The title of Associate Professor Emeritus. I continued to teach part-time at the Honors College until 2017. I have been a member of the University of Maine nearly 50 years. To understand the effect of the plan, you need to understand basic assumption about being human that guides the university. This assumption recognizes that all humans are endowed with the need and the right, sense of self-worth, and to live life with a full sense of dignity. There are several levels to what you have done to that assumption. First, it is clear that the amount of funding is woefully inadequate, will become more so with age, be even greater with pre-existing conditions. Dealing with COVID-19 will add more to the cost, and if there is a pre-election change, the court will be even worse than that. Second, you have shifted responsibility, creating and approving the plan from the board, being an administrative matter. The system created the plan in secrecy and presented as a de facto reality, had to be accepted for all adult benefits. Your decision is responsible for our loss of voice. I have been rendered powerless. Life with dignity requires some degree of personal choice, personal power. That dignity is denied us. Third, I have been changed from a person of at least some worth to dignity, a mere object with no power and having only the worth that I might have in the market. And this objectified and dehumanized. This is true of all other retirees. Knowledge was driven home Carol Corcoran, CHRO, spelling out the dimensions of my new identity. The letter was addressed to dear retiree. Objects in the marketplace need only a designation of place in the catalog. Designation by one's name is unnecessary. Damage done to me and a large number of retirees is considerable and will continue to capture to vote. I ask you, no, I plead with you to do two things. One, revise the revised health plan carefully, understand all of its consequences, estimate its many problems, nullify the plan, and have it done right. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Our next speaker is Catherine Guyenguest. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, that is Guyan, yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please begin.
I am Catherine Guyan, a healthy 80-year-old woman, humane retired faculty prior to 2010. I have a contract with the university, with you all who are entrusted with guiding this university system. This contract was offered as an early retirement incentive, a mutual benefit to serve university cost-saving priorities in the late 1990s. I have made life decisions based on it. This contract included a full group health care coverage plan paid by the university. As far as I know or can discover, this contract remains valid. Therefore, with great surprise and no prior information from the university, in mid-August, I received a packet from Aon, an organization I had never heard of, telling me, well, despite hours of following their protocol, I still have a heap of questions. Most significantly, how will you fulfill your obligations under our contract? I do understand that I get a $2,100 university payment into an HRA next year, and then the university is absolved of any responsibilities and conditions. I have no way of knowing if and how this amount will cover even my current healthcare needs. And how can I trust what amount the university will contribute in the future? I do understand that all of retirees with varying healthcare contracts are being moved from a university group policy that is designed to serve and share all variation of members' expenses and needs to an open market, which is driven by the self-interest of the insurance entities which are served by Aon. I don't believe this upholds your contract with me and many other retirees. We retirees have also been told that unequivocally, we must participate in this Aon program, signing up for a new healthcare plan by December 31st, or relinquish all further support by the university. Yet here's our dilemma. By our very participation in this new arrangement with Aon, you are forcing us to be the ones breaking the contractual agreement between us and you. In rural Michigan, where I grew up, this is called a BDYD proposal. Be damned if you do, be damned if you don't. Without exaggeration, this is the most disturbing and disruptive change affecting our health and well-being during these already highly stressful times. The university is you. All can do better than this. I offer 3 R's. Rescind this program. Delay its development immediately, returning to an equivalent coverage granted by contract. 2, research. Study the healthcare needs of various retirees with the intent of covering the range of needs, ages, and conditions. 3, redevelop options that will best meet all retirees' needs as we make our way through these times in aging. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guyenguest. We appreciate your comments. Next up is Irene McMahon.
Good morning. My name is Irene McMahon, I'm a university retiree, and thank you for letting me make a few comments to you, the Board of Trustees, on my situation. I've not been sleeping well since receiving the glossy meant to impress brochure that only increases my anxiety every time I look at it because it reeks of big corporate money and little in the way of health insurance. My father used to ask me, Irene, will you have health insurance when you retire? Yeah, Dad, the pay is ridiculously low, but the university has me covered. My pay as a nurse practitioner was so low that my contemporaries were making 2 to 3 times that of what I made at the University of Maine at Augusta. Our students, once they graduated, made more money than we did. We did not receive cost of living increases at the university for many years that I worked, or they were so low to be laughable. It felt like we were the worker bees. We did not have stock options. The pension plan is a laugh, an annuity that disappears in 20 years. Many people today live longer than age 85. When an employer makes out budgets, I know that benefits are part of the cost and responsibility of hiring. The healthcare benefit for retirees has been negotiated, contracted, and promised to us. Do you think as a nurse practitioner whose father and herself have some financial acumen would have contemplated working for the University of Maine with the pay rate I receive? No, of course not. I am a University of Maine graduate, as well as most of my family. My husband, my daughter, mother, both my in-laws are or were University of Maine or University of Southern Maine graduates. I received mailings and emails about donating to the university and setting up my will to donate. How many retirees who are impacted will donate another $1? Those of you who are trying to raise funds, think about that. Think about the negative reactions many others will have with the university system who cannot fulfill their promises. Now, instead of writing letters to the state for help with funding, we're all busy writing negative letters to the newspaper, our legislators, and even on Facebook. I have spent my life promoting higher education, preventing teen pregnancies, teaching students of all ages to stay in school. The amount of welfare I have saved the state of Maine is incalculable. My story is one that would help raise funding for the university at a legislative hearing. UMA had an associate's degree in nursing. I still encourage all my former students to continue their education to obtain the bachelor's degree. Many have chosen the University of Maine or the University of Maine at Fort Kent. I'm still in contact with many former students. What kind of caring message are you sending to all students on how to care for retirees and the elderly? The next time a University of Maine system RN, a nurse, cares for you, remember this lesson you are teaching. The lesson that is that you have chosen your most vulnerable population and proverbially thrown them under the bus. For me, it feels like I've been hit by a semi going 80 miles per hour. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Ms. McMahon. We appreciate your comments. Next up is Ennis Marshall.
Hello, my name is Ennis Marshall. On August 31st, Provost John C. Boland sent out a message saying, "This is a time of extraordinary social and political unrest and of unprecedented human-caused climate change. Public institutions of higher education, which lead in learning, innovation, and creation, must also become leaders in equity and inclusion, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and environmental justice. The measures of success in equity and inclusion are shifting in the country, and we need to be ready to meet them, not just in words, but in actions as well." We couldn't agree more with this sentiment. Back in 2016, the board adopted a socially responsible investment policy for the managed investment pool in the wake of discussions with the Divest Humane Student Group. Fossil fuel divestment has already been implemented by numerous universities across the country and typically aims to reduce fossil fuel exposure by 90 to 99% within a period of 5 years. Looking back, the ESG policy has reduced fossil fuel exposure by only 33% over 4 years. More concerning is the stagnation of the ESG scores themselves. The environmental score has consistently been sitting around 7% below the ESG benchmark, and specifically the carbon emission score has consistently sat around 11% below the ESG benchmark. Neither score has any clear trend showing improvement over the lifetime of the ESG investing policy. Furthermore, the policy only applies to the MIP, neglecting to address the exposed $4 million in the operating fund. The overall ESG score has shown improvement, but looking at the actual point breakdowns, it's clear that that improvement is mostly due to social and governance factors rather than environmental. We applaud the university's incorporation of ESG investing, but it's not a suitable substitute for a true divestment policy. We're asking the Board of Trustees to consider fossil fuel divestment more seriously, starting with 3 actions. 1, the adoption of the policy that any new investment must pass a negative screen based on the carbon under round 200. 2, the direct divestment of the 1.3 million fossil fuel exposed dollars in the IR&M short 1 to 3 year separate account. And 3, a commitment to work with us alongside the financial experts at the Intentional Endowments Network to develop and implement a 5-year plan to gradually phase out commingled and mutual funds with significant fossil fuel exposure, as well as to develop a more robust and sustainable reinvestment strategy. Thank you for your time. We hope you embrace this opportunity to do right by your students. We look forward to collaborating with you to safeguard our futures, not just in words, but in actions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Next up is Kathleen McEnany.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kathleen McEnany. I'm a retired professor of geography and environmental planning from the University of Maine, Farmington. Some of you may remember me. I served as UMS representative to the Board of Trustees for about 5 years. When I retired at the end of 2017, I thought for sure I'd never be back at a board meeting. However, the recent changes to the retirement system has brought me back, at least virtually. I wrote to the Board of Trustees on August 31st after having received that shiny packet that has been referred to concerning the change in insurance for UMS retirees. The issues that I addressed are still there. AON's business model, which pays for clients to wrangle customers and more compensation for the insurance for Aon when customers are brought to the insurance company. Given their business model, how can we be sure that we are getting the best plan for ourselves and the best value, and also for the university? Enrollment in Aon is required to use the HRA funds, which are not sufficient in any case. We will be required to pay for treatment up front and be reimbursed. This could indeed be a burden for some. The lack of ease to use the website, that almost all of the access to Aon is through the web, and for many older retirees, that could be problematic. For those of us who live in areas poorly served by the internet, that could also be a problem. I live in rural North Carolina, and internet service is not the best here. Those of us who live out of state also lose protections of Maine law. Community-based pricing, for example, which means that as we age, our costs go up regardless of the requirement in Maine that they do not. The secrecy that this deal was created, did it even occur to you to ask retirees if they were okay with this, or if this would be a good idea for them, or to offer this perhaps as an option? Did you consult the unions? I don't think so. Like my colleagues within the humane system, I planned my retirement based on information available to me at the time, some of which I later found out was incorrect. I retired in 2017 and in December, and this plan was under consideration then. I don't know if it would have changed anything, but it would have been nice to know. This change and the way it was brought about raises real concerns for me. What happens at the end of the Aon contract? Is that when UMS will finally walk away from its promises to its employees and retirees? Were these benefits agreed to close the labor deal and really not intended to be upheld? What assurance do we have that this HRA will continue after the first year? Was there a request for proposals? What were the alternate offers? I have heard it said by BOT members that retirees are no longer employees, they are not entitled to representation by their union, and that the BOT can take away the few benefits that retirees have anytime they wish. I hope you think more of your current employees than this and recognize the contributions that folks who have worked hard, done the hard work of maintaining the humane system over the years have done, and are really not holding us in contempt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen. We appreciate your comments. Next is Stephen Colburn. Stephen, are you there? All right, let's move on to the next one, which would be Susan Feiner. Good morning, Dr. Feiner. Are you there? Okay, let's move on to the next on the list, which is Senator Rebecca Millett. Senator Millett, are you there?
I am. Good morning, Chair Derwin.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Chairman, Chancellor Malloy, and esteemed trustees. My name is Rebecca Millette, and I serve as State Senator representing South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, and part of Scarborough. And I'm the current Senate Chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. I have served on the committee my full 8 years of service and have had the opportunity to work with the university system on issues ranging from affordability, completion, facilities, credit transfers, and of course, budgetary matters. I proudly share the good work of the university at national meetings and know that our UMS graduates take with them a top-notch education that will serve them well in their future endeavors. The quality and strength of their degrees rests squarely on the renowned faculty the system has recruited. It has been reassuring to hear from the university about its laser-like focus on enhancing students' learning experience, opportunities for innovation, and student success and persistence, which I will add relies significantly on the excellence of its faculty. So I was shocked when I received word of the system's decision to stop providing health insurance to its retirees. When an institution's reputation relies so heavily on its human resources, I have grave concerns for the long-term fallout on recruiting and retaining quality faculty. It is equally concerning to learn that this decision was made without involving the faculty, retirees, or their unions. And then, to add insult to injury, this is being rolled out in the middle of a pandemic that has taken the lives of so many Americans, spreading without mercy to our communities. I am dumbfounded that the university administration felt that this was the opportune time to drop retirees' health insurance plans. The system's briefings to legislators have extolled how great this change will be for retirees. I have heard from retirees, and they are scared and concerned. Their concerns are real, their questions are real. I ask the board to slow this process down. Don't force your retired faculty and staff to abandon their plans for something they don't trust, and fear will leave them exposed to financial insecurity and inability to access needed health care. If this change truly will not negatively impact retirees and offers more choice, then slow down. Slow down enough so that folks can willingly jump on board rather than feeling run over by a speeding train. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Millette. Next is Ron Mosley. Ron, are you able to hear us? Awesome. Yes, Ron, we can barely hear you.
Oh, can I, I'll speak louder. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, very good. Please go ahead.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Ron Mosley. I'm Professor Emeritus at the University of Maine, Machias, and AFM President Emeritus. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Chancellor Malloy, but I recognize all the other people I see on my screen and many of the current trustees. For quite a few years, I spoke at board meetings and often touted the principles in decision-making of transparency, of consensus building, and of broad participation of stakeholders. I haven't seen those principles observed in the current process. And that's really the topic that I addressed today. The official notice of this change was a surprise. I believe that the repealing of policy 411 effectively shielded the current change effort from public view. And I really would like to starkly contrast that process that's currently underway with the principles that the board has applied previously and the processes the board has used previously.
when the last major changes were made in the retiree health care. It started with Chancellor McTaggart and continued with Chancellor Patnod in forming what was known as RIPTA, the Retiree Health Plan Task Force. There were 3 iterations of that task force. It was very participatory. It even included a couple of trustees. It included university presidents, system and campus administrators, faculty, staff, and yes, even retirees on the task force. RIPTIP 1, the first iteration, ended up making recommendations that were adopted by the Board of Trustees and was very successful. It was actually originally occasioned by a Government Accounting Standards Board new rule that ended up requiring organizations like the university to recognize on its books an accrued liability for future post-employment benefits. That actually meant about a $330 million obligation or liability to be recognized on university books. Bottom line, RIPTIP 1 reduced that liability by more than 50%. It also even resulted in greater reductions in the annual required contribution for retiree health care and the annual actual pay-as-you-go cost. RIPTIP 3 actually extended that further and reduced the annual required contribution by almost 18%. I won't bore you with all the details here because I know I'm running short of time. I will email my comments to the board, but I would simply say that that process that has worked so well for so long was continued in FTIP, which continues on now, and it is not too late for the board to apply the methods that have worked so well for so long. And I fully believe that if the stakeholders share ownership of the issues and responsibility for the solution, I have no doubt that the outcomes will work for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate your thoughts. And now our next speaker is State Representative Mattia Daughtry. Good morning.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Irwin, Chancellor Malloy, and other distinguished members of the UMaine Board of Trustees. I'm Representative Mattia Daughtry, and I represent House District 49, which is about half of Brunswick. I'm the current House Chair of the Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business Committee, and prior to that, I was a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs for 6 years. I come before you this morning, like many others, in regards to the changes to the University of Maine system retiree health plan shifts. Over the past weeks, I've heard from several constituents who are frankly panicked and greatly nervous and scared about the shift. I recognize that we are headed into our second recession in less than 15 years. It's an unprecedented time, not only for the state, but also for all institutions of higher education throughout our region. We all know the state budgets and our personal budgets that we'll see in the upcoming months and year will be very different and incredibly tight, and it's going to require creativity to get through the next step. We'll all have some very difficult decisions to make. The UMaine system has been in the process of streamlining their budget, and I've been aware and very grateful for the work that has been done. Whether it's looking for efficiencies and savings system-wide, I applaud much of that work, but this change does have me deeply concerned. During the COVID-19 pandemic, healthcare should never be a cut. In fact, healthcare coverage is even more crucial now than at any other time. The retirees that I've spoken to all brought up that they felt that the system had broken a promise to them. When recruiting faculty and staff, a benefits package is vital. And all of the retirees that I spoke with mentioned that part of their decision to take a position with the UMaine system was about the long-term retiree healthcare coverage. All said that they discovered the change when a new packet arrived in their mailboxes. They felt completely left out of the process, blindsided, and honestly quite fearful of what was coming next. It's already difficult enough to age in place in our state, and these changes for our Maine-based retirees will further exacerbate this decision. I urge the board to re-examine this and open a continued dialogue with the UMS retirees. We've heard from several of them this morning, and they can speak more eloquently in greater detail in how this impacts their daily life. The UMaine system is one of the jewels of our state, and our UMaine graduates are known throughout our nation. A large part of what makes our students excel is the excellent quality of our teaching faculty. After a lifetime of service to the system, and in turn our state, our UMS retirees should not have to fear for the continued existence and quality of their healthcare coverage plans. Thank you for your time this morning and your attention to this matter, and for all you do to make sure that a University Maine system is known throughout not just our nation, but our world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Daughtry. And next is John Blees. Morning.
Yes, this is John Bleed. Dear trustees, the university trustees propose changes to the retirees' health benefits, which were clearly understood when I retired, are of grave concern to me and my wife. I started working for the university in 1960 as a biochemist and also for the athletic department. So I have devoted 55 years of service to it and trusted that the university would follow through on its promise to provide us with excellent health coverage. If this proposal with Aon is finalized, I surely and security my wife and I have felt in regard to our health insurance will be greatly diminished. It is likely that as we age, we will have more health issues, and on a fixed income, we are unable to adapt to any negative changes in our health benefits package. It leaves us very concerned and afraid for our future. It is vital and moral obligation for the university to live up to promises it made to its retirees. The health of the whole community is at stake. If the cost goes up and the benefits go down, allowing any negative changes to the health benefits package, it's a dangerous precedent. It is all right to change the offer to future employees, but not okay to break a promise that people are counting on. Please do the right thing and live up to our agreement. Sincerely, John A. Blees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blees. I'm going to come back to Mr. Stephen Colbert. Are you there? We skipped you because we couldn't hear you, but are you there? And how about Susan Feiner? Okay, then that concludes citizen comment. I want to just let.
I emailed on Monday, September 22nd.
Who is this?
On this list.
Who is this, please?
This is Jim McClymer. I emailed the university on Monday, 9/22, to be on the speaking list. I can forward that email if needed.
Okay, no one here seems to have received the email, but I will certainly accept your word for it if you would like to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm Jim McClymer. I'm the AFM president, and I know and respect many of you. Let me just say the optics of watching some of you look at your phones while people on the retirees calling and watching, doing something that's very difficult, isn't very good. I've spent a lot of time what I want to say, and I don't want to say anything and tell you the truth. We shouldn't be at this position. Many of us feel that you have sold the retirees and current employees to Aon for a profit, and you've sold us out. Ron talked more eloquently than I will about the process. I'm going to use the word deceit. Back in March, you should check what the board book said. Read what Chris Lindstrom wrote about the purpose of transitioning to an APL. In retrospect, was that an honest assessment of what happened? Did you have meetings, perhaps an executive session, saying that, hey, you pulled one over on the people of Maine by working behind the scenes? For professional engineers on the board, you remember the canon prohibits deceitful acts? Let's talk about Aon for just a moment and how UMS has failed to act. You know, Aon is telling people they must buy from their exchange, yet the contract is explicit that they do not have to. The contract says you can get reimbursed from the HRA. Aon is violating the contract they've signed. That gives you ground to break that contract. What about the HRA? Lost forever if you don't use it. That's not in the contract. It's not anything the University of Maine system has published or authorized. Apparently, Aon is creating policy for the University of Maine system. These things should greatly concern you. I'm going to close with the concept of empathy. Things get harder as we get older. We hear that people are scared, and it's harder to do these things. We all know that many retirees will have a difficult time trying to get reimbursed for their expenses. They will have to fight with an organization that's already shown itself in a short time related to the University of Maine system to be untruthful. People will lose money. People will be hurt by this. I'm going to join everyone else. Stop this now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me the courtesy of speaking.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to all of our speakers. It's clear that this issue is causing significant concern to a large number of people. Let me just say that we appreciate and value the feedback and input that we've received. I want to comment briefly on the context that got us here, and I also want to let everyone know that you will hear from the board, in the days ahead concerning this. Many of you who reached out to us in writing, who've emailed us, you will be receiving responses. But the context that got us here is that with a group of about 2,900 people, our retiree health cohort has very little clout with an insurer that just keeps raising costs, or I should say the price of coverage. And the only way we have been able to find to address that is with the move to the exchange, which gives some buying clout back to the consumer. I want everyone to know that the system is going to support each and every one of our retirees in connection with this change and the challenges that they may be having. You will be receiving more communications about it. It's evident that the communications you have received have not been sufficient, and we need to do a better job with that, and we will. So with that, I'm going to now move on to my report, the chair report, and let me just start that by saying that I think I know I speak for all the board members when I say how grateful we are, and we'll just leave it at that, how grateful we are for the magnificent work being done on all of our campuses at all levels by all stakeholders to have enabled us to resume operations this fall during this pandemic. And I think every president and their staffs deserve enormous credit for having rallied together and worked with the chancellor and his team so that we could take a cohesive and unified approach to this. I want to thank the faculty who have, we mentioned last spring how impressed we were with how rapidly they were able to adapt to the shift to all online learning. Over the course of the summer, many faculty have been hard at work further enhancing their use of technology to be able to deliver our courses remotely. And I want to thank all of them for the work that they have done. I want to thank our IT team under the leadership of David Damaris for the terrific job that they have done in rapidly implementing some significant improvements to try to make this work better for everyone. So thank you to all of you folks. And especially I want to thank our students who have made the best of a challenging situation. They have, as we look at daily at the numbers from our COVID testing, it is astonishing to me that we have zero or close to zero pretty much from day one since we've resumed operations. Now, we know that there's risk that this could change anytime, and we will remain vigilant about that. But I just think it's worthwhile to say thank you, Chancellor Malloy, for your leadership on all of this, and to everyone that has demonstrated how well we can work as a team when we put our mind to it. This has been really a great performance. So I'll pause there, and if any trustees want to have any other particular comments on this, I want to give you an opportunity certainly to say so. This has really been, these are extraordinary times, and we've had, I think, an extraordinary response. So I'll open the floor briefly for any comments. Yes, Trustee Riley.
Thank you. I spend my life with states working on the COVID response, and I can't say enough about the extraordinary work that's gone on here. It's just so impressive. And I know it's almost dangerous to talk about it because we don't want to jinx the future and we know anything can happen. But the way science is leading this work, the way the campuses have come together is incredibly impressive, and I think bodes well. The likelihood of some kind of flare-up is real, and I think we're ready for it. I also think it relates to our earlier conversation. Our work to focus on COVID and do such a good job meant that people were stretched arguably too thin, and I think maybe resulted in not a timely enough engagement with retirees. And it's not an excuse, but I think it helps us understand the problem we're in on the retiree health side. And it was clearly a crisis that had to be addressed and has been addressed just magnificently. I think like so many things this university does, it's a wonderful shining light that doesn't get the attention it deserves. And I think all of the board members are just very impressed, and we have confidence that when something happens, and there will be an outbreak, it's inevitable, that we are as ready as we can be. And I'd just like to applaud everybody. It's just been terrific.
Thank you, Trustee Riley. Any others?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll echo Trustee Riley's comments and talk a little bit about some of the comments that the Chancellor has made in the past about when he started to want to think about our response and what we're going to do and how we're going to line up things. And big shout out to our folks in the risk department who were already thinking, planning, and starting to implement plans. And then President Farini Mundi and all the folks who were kind of wrapping around the science, as Trustee Riley said, into thinking of how do we implement it. Finding the public-private partnerships for testing, planning, and then the very quick reaction when there is somebody who tests positive to help those students, faculty, or staff be safe in a very caring way for their health care, but also to quickly take them out of the stream of putting others at risk for being infected. You know, I was reading this weekend about Alabama and the severe outbreaks they've had, and it made me reflect on just how lucky we are to have such talented staff, cooperative students, and to kind of implement a safe work environment. I currently have a student at UMaine and feel very safe with his attendance and the way that we're treating students overall. So as a parent and as a trustee, I wanted to echo Trustee Riley and thanking folks for really thinking it through and for acting in the absolute best for Maine, not just for our campus. And again, reflecting on what's happened in some other campuses, it really does show just how good this plan and implementation of it is. And the final kind of shout out, my employer was so impressed with what UMaine has done that we've emulated that which we could do on our campus, so we can keep our 1,000 employees safe as well. So thank you for leading the way.
Thank you, Trustee Donnelly. Much appreciated. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee
I would just add, I think to build up on something that I think has not been explicitly said, that the communication around the university's planning for COVID, what's happening with COVID, cautions around COVID, the communication has been excellent. Not just, obviously as trustees, we get the emails and the daily updates, but the website, the maintenance of the website, the daily updates, but also as I take graduate courses part-time at the University of Maine, so I get the student communications as well, and the direct communications from campus presidents, from the deans, has been excellent to students about what their responsibilities are, what their role is, to students, faculty, staff, what their roles are to collectively prevent the spread of COVID. I think it's been a wonderful effort. And I think Trustee Riley makes a very effective point that it does stand in contrast to the conversations around the retiree health change. And think we can certainly use this, how we've handled COVID, as an example of how we should try to do as many things as possible as we move forward, because the communication has really been excellent across all groups. And I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Trustee Kane. Any other comments before we move on? Don't see any hands. All right. Thank you for sharing those additional thoughts. Let me also quickly acknowledge the great work that Vice Chancellor Lowe and his team, both in the system office and on the campuses, have done, dealing with the financial and enrollment impacts of COVID. I think everyone knows that when we last looked at our budget situation, we were not balanced. We had so much uncertainty in front of us with regard to enrollment and appropriations. Not all of that uncertainty has been resolved, but it's in a much clearer picture. We expect to be able to resolve finally a budget next month. But in the meantime, the folks who handle our system and campus finances and who handle our enrollment have really done a terrific job, and we'll hear more about that when later in the meeting. But I just want to call out that one of those have been among the biggest challenges we've had, in addition to safe operation, has been the finances of all of this. And I think, again, under the Chancellor's leadership, we've really rallied to that cause. So thank you for that. I want to turn now briefly to General Counsel Phelan, this is another shout out, but this has to do with a ruling that we got from the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education with regard to our website. So Jim, if you could just update folks on that.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Irwin. I'll spend 30 seconds just providing the context for the chair's comments. We received a complaint in November of 2017 from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights that a number of pages on the maine.edu website, which is the primary system web page, as distinguished from each university's separate web pages. But the complaint asserted that certain pages and content on those pages were not meeting the standards of web accessibility that were the primary industry standards. This is the type of complaint that you don't respond to with legal defenses and otherwise. You look at your website, you determine whether your content is accessible. And if it's not, you work with the Office of Civil Rights to determine how to make the content accessible. So that was the course that we chose. We entered into what's known as the resolution agreement with the Office of Civil Rights in early 2018. That agreement, which was essentially a negotiated agreement to how we would come into compliance and how we would make our content more accessible online, created a timeline by which we would do that work, created some reporting obligations back to the Office of Civil Rights. And I'm proud to say, as the chair alluded to a moment ago, that as of last week, we received confirmation from the Office of Civil Rights that we had done the work properly, that our reporting was accessible, and that the content that was the subject of the complaint had been updated and approved. Now, that's not to say we do not have an ongoing responsibility to continue making our web content accessible. It is real work. It is in some occasions a significant burden to do so, but it's the right thing to do, and it's what we do to make our content publicly accessible. And it's particularly relevant for the board because one of the most primarily accessed public-facing sites with the most content is in fact the board's web pages. Think about the PDFs of board materials that are available either from prior board meetings or current board meetings, committee meetings. All of the content that's there has to be accessible to the public. And there was a significant amount of work over the last couple of years undertaken to make those web pages accessible. I want to call out particularly our CIO, David Demers, Mike Sear on his team, Vice Chancellor Robert Placido played a significant role, as did Sam Warren, Sarah Malarchuk in the General Counsel's office, Ellen and Heather here in the board office, Rosa Radonnet, and then Samantha Kramer as well. All did tremendous work to help us redesign web pages and make content on it accessible. So I want to stress again, this is an ongoing responsibility, but we satisfactorily resolved the concerns that led to the complaint, and that's a good step forward.
Thank you, Jim, and congratulations to you and your team. I know this is not the kind of thing that gets a lot of attention, and it's just a lot of technical and kind of detail work, but it's a major issue for us to have resolved this, and I know we'll stay on top of it, and we really appreciate your efforts. I have a couple of certificates of appreciation that I'm pleased to read. The first is for Heather Ball, who is faculty representative from the University of Maine, Machias. And I will read we're not handing out the certificates physically here, but let me read it so that the board is aware of this. The University of Maine System Board of Trustees presents to Heather Ball a certificate of appreciation for her dedication and leadership as a faculty representative to the Board of Trustees from the University of Maine at Machias. Heather's term was May 2018 to September 2020. The certificate of appreciation will be mailed to Heather. So Heather, if you're listening, thank you very much. We appreciate all the time that our faculty and student representatives put into this job, and we wish you well. The second resolution that or certificate that I'd like to read is for Abigail Pooler, a student representative from the University of Maine at Fort Kent. The University of Maine System Board of Trustees presents to Abigail Pooler a certification of appreciation for her dedication and leadership as a faculty, should be a student representative, to the Board of Trustees from the University of Maine at Fort Kent. Abigail's term was May 2019 to September 20, and the certificate of appreciation will be mailed to Abigail. Abigail, likewise, thank you to you if you're listening for your participation with the board and your time and service. That concludes the chair's remarks, and now I would like to turn it over to the chancellor for his remarks.
Thank you, Chair. I very much appreciate the sentiment that you spoke about with respect to the hard work of the presidents, all of the staff, faculty, and students with respect to our reopening. I just want to touch on a few points, knowing that I will be followed by the two vice chancellors in extensive discussion on specific issues. Clearly, this has been a challenging time for us. I have widely stated that you could have worked in higher education for 100 years and not had to face a pandemic, and I got to do it in my first year. It has been an interesting exercise and one that we would not have gotten to this point without real teamwork. And so everybody in the system whose face may appear on your screen or may speak today really have done outstanding work. Before I talk about how we did what we did, let me also touch on a couple of other points first. Many writers in higher education predicted a 5 to 20% drop off in freshman populations and in school populations as a result of the pandemic we are currently experiencing. However, here in Maine, our drop off of total number of students, and these are not the final numbers, looks to be about 1.2 or 1.3% in total students. If you had told me just 90 days ago or 60 days ago that would be our outcome, that we'd see a little greater loss on the undergraduate side, more largely made up on the graduate side, I would have thought that was not possible. This came about as a result of a number of circumstances which played out, not just in the pandemic, but a decision last September to engage in further reach out to Maine families to make sure that they understood the opportunities presented to them by the university system, and has continued throughout in the hard work, obviously, that each one of our universities did perform to attract students and retain students. I also think it was aided by some of the things we did in the very first few days of the pandemic. After all, we were one of the first universities in the entire nation to return funds to families who desperately needed them at that time with respect to reimbursement of room and board expenses. And we were the first university in the area to return CARES Act dollars to families as well. I think that the ability to turn those decisions around and to deliver onto families that which they so richly deserved and needed played well for us ultimately in the circumstances leading to the population of students we had returning. I want to move on to another point. We made a decision and you allowed us to move forward with our goal of modernizing 161 or 62 classrooms. By the time we got to open classes, I think we completed, and David might correct me subsequently, over 140 of those classrooms. I had the opportunity in my visits to Fort Kent and Presque Isle to see those classrooms at work. And I can tell you that that decision is allowing us to deliver the content we are delivering far better than we would have been able to do without that expenditure and without that work. I think an appreciation for the system was demonstrated by, quite frankly, the great turnaround of our faculty and staff when we had to send students home. The amount of information we shared on an ongoing basis has also contributed to that retention at a higher rate than many, many other institutions throughout the land. Finally, I think perhaps one of the better decisions we made early on in the pandemic was to be guided by the science of it, understanding and giving over to the fact that we're not in charge, the virus is. I want to stop here and say that I am particularly grateful for the great work that's been done by the state of Maine in its entirety. We always said that the civil authority was our guidepost, and one guidepost, and science was the other. The Science Advisory Board has done extraordinary work in putting together a plan that allowed us to open safely and quite frankly, comparatively better than just about any other, and I knock on wood saying this, university in the region and perhaps the nation. After all, it was the Science Advisory Board that came up with and improved our testing system. Whereby we tested all out-of-state students and all students who would be residing with us. We did, in fact, discover 13 or 14 cases through that testing, an extraordinarily low number, which I think also speaks to the communications we were having with the students in the final month before they're returning to the campus. Clearly, that was taken into strong consideration, both by our in-state and out-of-state students, leading to the extraordinary results that we have thus far seen. We're now in phase 3, actually have begun our second test period in phase 3, whereby we seek to test 10% of all on-campus students, faculty, and staff. We have excluded testing individuals who will not be on our campuses or visit our campuses at any time during the semester. And we have also understood that we needed to make some exceptions with respect to specific health concerns that may exist. This testing is underway. We've had one round. We've learned extensively from that round and now proceed with the second round, where I hope that we'll have 100% cooperation by all staff, faculty, and students who are designated to be tested on a random basis. Speaking of changes, however, we did understand that we have we're now confronting particular county-wide circumstances that are requiring us to change that system to some extent. And we did that in the first round, specifically around the number of cases at York County and our facilities in that county and adjoining county, Southern Maine drawing a large portion of its population from York County or living in the immediate area. And we did additional tests there, and we will continue to amplify testing in counties or circumstances where we know that there is more community spread. What is truly amazing about what is ongoing thus far, and I agree, we'll see more cases at some point, so I don't want to tempt fate, but that our rate of infection is actually substantially lower than the rate of infection, at least by testing, that we're seeing on the statewide population in general. If you had told me that would be possible, I would have thought that would have been a crazy thought. But here we are, at least currently, in circumstances where we are, not only did we not bring the virus to the state, not only did we not spread the virus throughout the state, but in fact, we're doing substantially better in the circumstances as we can isolate them in our population. Spring, obviously, will be another COVID affected semester. We've already announced that we will begin that semester approximately 1 week later. We will eliminate the spring break and we will go straight to graduation. That particular concern, the adjustment is made because we do not desire to send students out of state in the middle of a spring semester to be traveling and then coming back to campus and potentially exposing their fellow students and the broader community of Maine to new rounds of infection. Other changes will be made and announced with respect to our ongoing testing that will be required. And we will be communicating that with students, faculty, and staff, just as we communicated our opening plans, specifically beginning informally on July 1st, but as early as April, talking about our intention to open to in-classroom learning opportunities. Final point, we understand that not every student wanted to take in-person classes. We understood that some faculty, because of circumstances in their lives, could not be exposed to in-classroom learning. We also understood that a number of our students needed in-class learning opportunities. I think what we've come up with is an extraordinary cross-section of courses, meeting the needs of students, protecting the quality of the education we're delivering, and making sure that we're doing best by Maine and those we invite to Maine to receive their education. Again, I want to thank each of the president's staff, all of the Science Advisory Board people, and the Safe Return Planning Committee for the extraordinary work they've done. This is a moment we should take great pride in what we have produced. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next item is Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration and Treasurer's Report. Vice Chancellor Lowe, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning to cover several topics this morning, but we'll start with retiree health just briefly. Like the board, I want to acknowledge the concerns and comments that we heard this morning, those that have come in via email to the board and others as well. I've had a chance to read, I think, nearly all of those. Certainly greatly appreciate the time that folks took to share their comments. Continue to strongly support the initiative, but again, want to acknowledge that we can and will increase communications to address some of the very specific concerns and questions that we're seeing come in including our commitment to providing retiree coverage, our commitment to indexing the HRA to preserve that buying power, as well as a commitment to increasing, the number of webinars if folks are looking for additional information. Carol Corcoran, our Chief Human Resource Officer, is going to talk a little bit about where we are in the process and what our next steps are, and certainly look forward to updating the board at upcoming FFT and BOT meetings as we move forward with this initiative. So let me throw it over to Carol. Carol, you're on mute.
Whew, okay, here I am. Thanks, Ryan. I do want to, and happily, I'm going to report the engagement that we've actually had. It's not, we've actually had a lot of support for the plan in the extent that people have participated in all of the avenues that have been made available. As you know, we originally reached out to our retirees in mid-August, and then purposely, and in hindsight probably shouldn't have, but we did purposely decide that we would give them a chance to think about this information. And we then a few weeks later sent out another note inviting them to put forth any kind of questions they may have. But since that time, and most importantly, is that we've had 8 webinars, and we've had over 1,000 people participate in those webinars. We've had over 500 people call directly our Employee Benefits Center, which is staffed by 6 people who are very knowledgeable and very skilled in helping people through the change curve that takes place when you're making this kind of a significant change. Aon has fielded over 1,400 preliminary phone calls with people to help them further understand the implications of the change. And the other, and I have written and talked to close to 100 people that have also expressed concerns. Or more importantly, and this is what I think is important to keep in mind, is that a lot of people they're nervous because they don't know what this is. And once you start explaining the benefits to them, they see the merits of the program, and that they have not only a chance for themselves to pick a plan that's most applicable to them in their health needs, but to their spouse. And that's something that's, certainly not what it was in the past. The other point that I would just make that in the state of Maine, there are over 78 plans available to people. And many of the big names that we all know in respect, like Anthem, United Healthcare. I often joke about the fact that I never thought my age would benefit me, but this past month, I have been able to have a lot of empathy for what the seniors are going through, because I am one of those people and I'm on a Medicare supplement plan, and it's really not as complicated or scary as they may think. But we have to just, work through that by educating them and being empathetic and helpful, and that's what we're doing.
Thanks,
and I'm happy to answer any questions that someone might have.
Could I ask a question about the Aon contract, Ryan? There were a lot of concerns in our public comment about Aon and how it's financed. Can we talk a little bit about the contract itself and what provisions we have to assure our members that there's full transparency and that there are no incentives for insurers to steer clients or otherwise harm our members?
You want to take that one, Carol?
Well, I know that the Aon contract, we're not paying Aon any remuneration for providing the services. And I think that Aon represents so many different health plans that there's the ability for, a book of business going one place or another, but I don't think that there's any strong incentive for them to be driving towards one particular plan over another. I know that in the state of Maine, a high proportion of people are through with United Health Plan, but I think that's, again, a plan that's been very well regarded. I don't know if I'm answering your question, trustee.
I guess the question is, what does our contract say about the transparency of the relationship between, because the way Aon is paid is not by us.
Correct.
Like a normal exchange that I understood, but by their relationship with insurance companies. The insurance companies pay them. Is there full transparency in the contract to make sure that that's a fixed fee arrangement and not an arrangement based on the numbers of covered lives they steer to particular companies?
I'll have to get back to you. I am not as familiar with the contract, so I'll be happy to get that information to you very quickly.
I think the people we heard from this morning would like to know that, and it probably raises some questions for us.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we know these plans are, as you would know better than us, highly regulated, but we can track down the specifics on that and absolutely share that with the board and others as well.
Ryan, could I just add to that response? When we went through the RFP process, we were also told by those we interviewed that the reimbursement is the same regardless, that it's federally mandated. So our understanding was that all the vendors are being compensated the same for the providers.
Thank you, Tracy.
Can I just ask a couple of clarifying questions as well, based on the public comment this morning? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the first one was that a couple of the people, I believe at least one, referenced that they're asking if there was an RFP. And I just want to make, it sounds like there was, of course there was, but I think it's important that we be clear about what is and isn't true. So there was an RFP process, right?
Correct.
There was, and we've had several requests to share that contract with different folks. So we've gone through the process of kind of removing the things that need to be removed, and we've shared that with those that have requested it.
That's great. And then I think there was another question I think goes under this broader category of just people need more information and they need it as clearly as possible about Aon telling them things and sort of driving them in one direction versus the other around buying from the exchange and not giving them all of their options. Do we have a way to understand what kind of guidance is being given so that we can make sure people are getting the full picture of the options that they have before them?
Well, my experience, and I have gone on their website, so as a sort of a independent third party went in, and I think that there's a very good job of making it very clear what's available to you based on the information that you provide, like how often you go to a doctor, do you have any medical issues, and this is just a preliminary view, because each individual person will have a one-on-one conversation. So people aren't blindly going to be just picking a plan without having had at least one phone conversation, if not many. I think maybe also there was some reference that there is a requirement that we have asked our people if they want to participate, they have to go through the Aon plan, that gateway. I mean, it's like AARP, it's a gateway into a lot of other plans. We can't have, 3,000 people sort of independently going out and getting individual insurance. So that's what I think they're referring to, is that we've asked them to, they have to go through us to get to the plans.
Great. And I think, just looking at my notes from all the people who spoke this morning, I feel like that as much as we can between now and the end of the year, continue to just communicate with people and be patient with them, because this is very scary. And I think, what we heard from the senator and the representative is a reflection of what they're hearing, in addition to what we're all hearing from our neighbors and people that we know who care deeply about the system like we do, and who also care deeply about our retirees. And so I appreciate in advance all of the work that your team is doing and will continue to do in the coming weeks to increase the transparency, increase the understanding, so that people can have more confidence and less anxiety and fear about their insurance. We could really hear that this morning. So I wanted to say thank you in advance for that work ahead.
Thank you. And you're right. I mean, you can never communicate too much, right? So we will continue.
Especially when it comes to health insurance. I mean, it's never easy, ever. It should be, but it is not.
On a good day, it's complicated. So.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'll move on to the next part of my presentation. I'll be talking this morning. We're going to talk about where preliminary FY20 year-end results. Be talking about temporary investment income, both for fiscal year 20 and 21, and give the board a brief update on the fiscal 21 budget and where we are. But before I do that, let me just echo the chair's comments about the budget work, and I give all of the credit in this case to the presidents, to the CBOs, to the campus staff. We've all read stories about the massive layoffs and furloughs that are occurring in higher education across the country, several of them right here in New England. We know that has not been the case here. And the reason for that is that the campuses have been, on top of this since March. They put measures in place to reduce spending and prevent, some of the actions that we've seen some of our colleagues, some of our peers doing across the country. So again, just want to echo those comments and really applaud the campuses for those efforts. So I'll start with preliminary year-end FY20 results on E&G and auxiliary, and let me thank the Vice Chancellor for doing the share screening on his side, so I can multitask with all the spreadsheets I have floating around me now. So on your screen are the FY20 preliminary year-end results. As a reminder, the figures do not include reserve transfers either from campuses or from the system's budget stabilization fund. And the final E&G and auxiliary figures are certainly better than we would have anticipated back in March. You can see in the forecast, things were looking very difficult for us and a lot of folks at that point. I'll highlight some of the campus specifics this morning, but big picture, most of the gap in this case at the campuses was closed by CARES Act dollars, about $8 million, and spending reductions. And even with those federal dollars and those reductions, it is important to note here that campuses still collectively finished more than $2.5 million in the red before those transfers. So I'll cover those campus specifics at a high level. I'll touch on some of the funds held at the system, and then I'll wrap up this part of the presentation by talking about fiscal year 20 investment income. So as a reminder on how to follow along on this chart, we go from left to right. We show the original budget as passed by the board back in May of 2019. We then update those figures after each quarter during the fiscal year. We show actual performance, and then at the end, the variance to that original budget. So using Orono as the example, you can see the original budget was balanced, but a gap opened up after that first quarter based on the fall enrollment last year. That had to do with the mix of in-state and out-of-state students. In March, the pandemic opened up large gaps at nearly all of our campuses. In Orono, that gap was entirely closed, mostly in three large chunks. So $4 million in CARES Act dollars, $4 million in vacancies and furloughs, and more than $4.5 million in spending reductions. The campus also had additional tuition revenue over budget in the summer that allowed them to close out the fiscal year with a positive figure. That pattern of CARES Act dollars, spending reductions, modest revenue above budget is largely the pattern that you're going to see repeated across all of our campuses. At Machias, they closed their budget gap with $340,000 in CARES Act dollars, about $200,000 in spending reductions, and another $50,000 in summer tuition revenue that was over budget. UMA finished the year about $1 million better than that original budget. The modest gap that remained here was a result of some severance arrangements that will produce savings in the long term, but represented a hit, if you will, to their numbers for fiscal year 20. Certainly, it was a challenging FY20 budget at UMF. The final budget here was aided by $1.1 million in CARES Act dollars, $300,000 in E&G revenue above budget. And as I noted, does not include, you'll see that in the footnote, does not include a planned $500,000 budget stabilization transfer to the campus. At Fort Kent, they finished the year in a strong year-end position, nearly $1 million ahead of budget, thanks to $250,000 in CARES Act dollars, some spending reductions, and again, some tuition revenue above budget. These dollars are helping the campus balance its FY21 budget. Important to note that with UMA, Fort Kent were the two campuses that were most heavily impacted by the flat appropriations that were ultimately included in the state's final general fund budget. Both of those campuses were looking at increases in excess of $800,000 and had to really scramble when the legislature left in March, and we ended up with that flat appropriation. The Presque Isle gap was reduced thanks to $300,000 in CARES Act dollars and $130,000 in spending reductions. At the University of Southern Maine, they closed a projected March gap of $3.7 million with the help of nearly $2 million in CARES Act dollars, $1.6 million in spending reductions, and another $600,000 in summer tuition revenue. In rounding out the campuses, Maine Law finished with a gap of $785,000. However, when you include the appropriation transfer from USM, the system transfer that goes to the law school, they actually would have finished with a balanced budget. Certainly impressive when you also consider that the law school was in line for an appropriation increase of more than $700,000 when the legislature adjourned in March. So I want to acknowledge the great work by the dean and her staff. Savings from governance and university services moving down to the system totals, largely a reflection of vacancies that occurred through the spring. The balances that you see in adult degree completion, in early college, generally are a result of delays in work that was scheduled in the spring. The strategic initiative balance there is really a timing issue. Those are dollars that are committed to demolition projects and also dollars that are part of the research reinvestment fund that have not yet gone out. As you can see here, moving down to the employee benefit pool, the line that represents the bulk of the positive system-wide balance, about 76% of it, is that employee benefit pool. That is directly a result of medical and dental claims coming in $4 million below budget due to the suspension of non-urgent care by providers back in the spring. In addition, one of the reasons why that line is a little higher than we had planned is that the state has yet to bill us for the March to June unemployment claims. So we will expect that certainly at some point. At some point before your October meeting, we're going to recommend a series of kind of budget actions to the chancellor. At this time, it's likely we would recommend any balance from that employee benefit pool be transferred into our healthcare reserve. That balance right now is currently well below recommended levels. I'll wrap up this portion of the presentation by talking about temporary investment income for fiscal year 20. So if we could shift slides, Robert. So a massive roller coaster ride, certainly since the start of the calendar year. As you can see on this slide, going across, we budget as a system $3.37 million in investment income. Those are the dollars that typically go back into depreciation, largely in the IT side of the house. So again, although this chart is showing temporary investment income, I spent Thursday of last week in an economic forecasting committee meeting looking at a ton of charts prepared by the Department of Labor, by Maine Revenue Services, by our state economist. Regardless of the charts that we were measuring, nearly all of them looked exactly like this one. A steep drop, then followed by, in a lot of cases, a really sharp recovery. In the past, temporary investment income typically would cover strategic spending initiatives by the board or be transferred into the system's budget stabilization fund. Again, while I mentioned earlier, while we've not finalized a recommendation to the chancellor just yet, in the absence of a commitment from the state, we will likely need these dollars above budget. We'll likely need those to cover the cost of further testing for our students, staff, and faculty for the second semester. You can drop this slide for just a brief moment, Robert, and I'll cover fiscal year 21 investment income. Again, those materials and details are included in the board materials and posted online. The July flash reports, I'll start with the managed investment pool with a market value of $363 million, experienced a gain of 3.9% for the month of June, or excuse me, for the month of July. I'd note here that UMS closed out the fiscal year 2020 with a net of fees positive return of 1.1% for the managed investment pool. The pension plan with a market value of $25 million saw a gain for July of 2.8%. In this case, FY20 saw a positive return of 5.4%. Higher than we saw in the managed investment pool, given the pension fund's more conservative portfolio, really protected us during the volatile market that commenced with COVID. And then finally, the operating fund with a market value of $257 million experienced a gain of 1.3% for July, and preliminary August results are indicating a 0.9% return. That is providing $5.8 million in net investment income for the first 2 months of the fiscal year. And as again, I noted on the previous chart, the operating fund returned 3.8%, yielding $8.2 million in net investment income in fiscal year 20, about $4.8 million over our budget. I'll move on to my last topic and then would be happy to answer questions on any of the anything that I've shared so far. We'll finish with a brief fiscal year 21 budget update. I'll touch on some of the highlights, but as I've noted at recent board and FFT meetings, and as the chair mentioned in his comments, our plan will be to come forward with necessary budget changes at the board's meeting on October the 28th. At that point, you can expect us to present balanced budgets that will address both appropriation losses or expected appropriation increases that did not materialize, as well as enrollment changes and other kind of COVID-related areas that have led to some of the fiscal challenges. You'll see plans to close those a month from now. I want to note up front that these figures represent a point in time. In this case, data through September the 21st. Enrollment for the fall semester and corresponding revenue will absolutely drop by census and likely to continue to drop during the fiscal year, during the fall semester, as students may need to drop out for completely legitimate reasons. Positive balances that are showing today could quickly evaporate before that second semester even begins. I'm not going to go through the individual campuses one by one, but want to acknowledge the great work at the campuses. All of the campuses are at or above budget in credit hours included in their June budget submissions. That is no small task. Certainly, even though we waited until just a few days before the fiscal year, certainly there were lots of unknowns. If you think back to where we were in June, so huge credit to the campuses, to the enrollment teams on all of the campuses for their ability, given all of that uncertainty, to be able to put together some budgets that are largely coming in on budget. Revenue, as I noted, is generally on budget, with just 2 campuses showing revenue under budget, and that is generally related to that projected mix of in-state and out-of-state students. On the auxiliary side, so on the right side of the chart, most of the campuses are experiencing larger than usual attrition from residence halls, likely for a variety of reasons. Again, there'll likely be continued melt over the coming weeks, and campuses will look for ways to reduce those costs to stay within budget. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we'll note again, we'll be back in front of you a month from now with final plans to amend those FY21 budgets. At that time, we'll present plans for each of the campuses to get them back into a balanced budget for fiscal year 21. That concludes my comments this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those topics.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Lowe, excuse me. Any questions or comments based on Ryan's presentation?
Yes, good morning, Chair. This is Lisa Eames. May I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. That was a terrific presentation. Can you remind us, do we have any obligation to repay CARES Act funds, or is that all forgiven?
We do not. So as I think the Chancellor briefly mentioned in his comments, we had roughly 18 million that came in back in March. Half of those dollars were institutional dollars. Half went out to students. So lots of those, and then we had a couple of additional small opportunities for at least 6 of our campuses for CARES Act dollars that came in after that. All of those do not need to, they're not loans, they're appropriations, allocations from the federal government. In some cases, some of those dollars, in a few cases at our campuses, actually will carry over to fiscal year into the fiscal year 21 budget. With very few exceptions, all of those dollars need to be spent by December 31st. So to the extent there are dollars left, you'll likely see the plans to allocate those when we come back in front of you in another month.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Vice Chancellor Lowe?
Quick question, Chair. Sven Bartholomew.
Yes, go ahead.
Chancellor Lowe, just quickly, when you start looking at next year's budgeting, FY 2021, and you start thinking about no CARES Act dollars accessible to us, what is our strategy for pivoting as we begin to go through that budgeting process?
Sure. Well, we're just getting ready to start the fiscal 22 budget is kind of the window that we're in right now. So expect to give out budget instructions and budget advice to the campuses by mid-October. So certainly some big questions out there. One of the biggest ones being state appropriation. And so, you know, we'll hopefully we'll get a better idea of how that plays out as the state's revenue forecasting committee makes some projections. But I think right now, what we're hopeful is that a lot of these deficits are driven by you know, COVID-related issues, including you know, a lot of the gaps that we have on the auxiliary side are ones where we drove the gap. In other words, we can't pack the dorms with 3 to a room. We have to recognize that we can only have so many students sharing bathrooms and those type of things. So I think we're hopeful that you know, assuming we can get you know, the virus gets under control, that a lot of these gaps are more one-time in nature. There are a couple of places where we have some structural ones. And we're working on those kind of outside the COVID side, looking to more tightly align our revenue and our expenses. But again, we're hoping, and it looks like a lot of these gaps are really driven by COVID issues.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we will move on to the academic affairs update, and that is Vice Chancellor Placido.
Thank you, Chair Irwin.
Good morning.
I'll just briefly add a few comments before we get into our presentations. First, you'll notice a number of academic programs in the consent agenda today. As I stated in the ASA, we've had a number of programs on hold, and 2 in particular have been on hold for going on 3 years. These programs will cost little to nothing to implement, but they will help us immensely for a number of reasons. First, they will help us organizationally by recognizing all the educational programs we have. For example, USM and UMA have operated education programs on a large scale, but they don't code these programs as educations. So to use our resources more efficiently, we first need to know a complete picture of the resources available. If we were reporting our pure education programs right now, we wouldn't include the majority of our education degrees or students being served. So a full, accurate accounting of our programs will help us to uncover opportunities to share courses, faculty, best practice, technology, etc. Repeating a bit of what the Chancellor shared earlier, we haven't finalized our enrollment yet, but as of last night, our enrollment was only down by a fraction of a percent, 0.3 to be precise, and that's head count. As Ryan showed, we have more credit hours per student, we have more out-of-state students, we have more graduate students, so our revenue is looking very well given the conditions. So I say only down because our enrollment forecasts of graduating high school students declining over year suggest that our enrollment could have been down by more than 4%, and that's without adding the additional COVID losses. COVID has impacted some institutions by more than negative 10%, and nationally it has lowered enrollment more than negative 2% on average. So not all of our institutions were down even by that fraction of a percent. UMPI, for example, will end, I suspect, up 10% or higher over last year. Our graduate programs, as the Chancellor mentioned, at UM and USM are going to finish with greater than 10% gains as well. Fort Kent's academic partnership program is starting to grow. Normally they enroll 45 students, nursing students in the fall. This year they will have around 120, including the second session. So we have two presentations for you today. The first is from President Rice's team, and the second from President Cummings and President Weich's teams. The President Rice will share with you some great news. Your very own University of Maine at Presque Isle has been recognized with a national honor and has been placed in a 2020 Great Colleges Honor Roll. The recognition is more than just a point in time award. This is something that all of our universities have worked for year over year, and we see year over year progress. This is in large part due to the efforts of our excellent HR team, which you will hear from one of them this morning. I thank them and their teams for making this possible. The Great Colleges to Work For program is designed to recognize institutions that have been successful in creating great workspaces. They annually measure the factors of success, work with the results, implement change, and repeat the process. UMPI has demonstrated consistent dedication to its people, and we know from studies and subsequent books like Good to Great that getting the right people on the bus and keeping them are key to our success. So congratulations to Ray, Dory, Megan, and all of the folks that made this possible. And I'd like to invite Megan Clough to begin the presentation.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Placido. I'm going to share my screen. Good morning, everybody. My name is Megan Clough, and I work for the Shared Services Department of Human Resources. I'm the Director of Learning and Organizational Development, and I've been with the university since 2014. When I arrived, I was working then for the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, who at that time had been now UMA President Rebecca Weich. And we immediately started talking about what really takes organizational change and drives it to continuous improvement and success. And so that journey started with an objective and a goal then, and we were able to reach a significant milestone this year, and excited to share that news. The short answer to her question at the time, and it had involved a multitude of people, is that when you look at organizations who are topping the charts across the nation, they have a secret recipe, and the recipe is that they focus on their employees first. When you focus on your employees first, then you're able to create an excited, happy, engaged employee team who are then able to really focus and energize toward whatever work they're doing. So that was the secret sauce. And so in regards to that, Vice Chancellor White then spoke to the Board of Trustees and all of you, and thank you very much, agreed that we need to focus on workforce engagement and committed to a very modest, and the good news is it only requires a modest investment relative to conducting the Great Colleges to Work For program every 2 years for every institution in our system, every one of our campuses. So we've been doing that since then. And a little bit of information about our journey. Again, we've been doing this for 6 years. And this year, the University of Maine Presque Isle was the first of our universities to be recognized on the 2020 Great Colleges Honor Roll, which is a very impressive first showing. And I can say honor roll here. What I can tell you is that the senior consultant at Great Colleges specifically called to ask and say, how did you take this institution from where it had been 2 years ago, which was already impressive, and essentially, in his word, was slingshot it even further forward, because the results bypassed everything in the New England area for all of its competitors, which we'll share in just a second. The Great Colleges to Work For program, for those of you trustees who are familiar with the best places to work in Maine, it is similar, except that this is specific for colleges and universities. It's national and sponsored by the Chronicle of Higher Education, assessing the qualities and characteristics demonstrated by top organizations. It includes 2 components, which is an institutional questionnaire and what we're most excited about, the employee job satisfaction survey, which includes both quantitative and qualitative feedback. Also, and this was a significant driver for us, it allows us some year-over-year comparison data, not only by each of our campuses, also in an aggregate format, anticipating a focus for the system overall. And it allows us to compare to honor roll institutions across the nation. We provide all of our universities a results debrief and internal motivator by virtue of the recognition and reward that comes with it. So on the right-hand side, you can see the exciting news, which was that UMPI was one of the 2020 New England Honor Roll recipients and was recognized in 11, actually, let me rephrase, was one of the 2020 great colleges across the nation within the New England area, was recognized for 11 out of 12 categories. And you can see the categories that comprise what recognition is focused on for great colleges, and that UMPI surpassed any other New England institution. And in fact, when we look nationally, UMPI surpassed all but 4, and only it and those others that I mentioned reached 11 out of 12. No institution achieved all 12 out of 12. So just a quick debrief. You all received a 7-page trend report. When UMPI reached this exciting milestone, Great Colleges called and said, Megan and University of Maine system, you had set an objective 6 years ago when we started, that you were going to do this as a system and do it with excellence. And we have seen that, and we would like to highlight you in our 2020 trend report and give you the lead story. So that allowed us to essentially have a 7-page highlight within a national report that was shared in September within the Chronicle of Higher Education, and is shared throughout the year at multitude of higher education conferences. These are some snippets directly from that 7-page report. All of you have that 7-page report. I've been told that I'm a little greedy and said that in a positive way because we submitted 9 pages, but they took it down to 7. So if anybody wants to see the full 9, we're happy to share that with you as well. We engage every 2 years, and our objective is to ensure a more consistent and positive experience for all UMS employees and students. We intentionally track our trends to drive decisions and investments, and if anybody has any questions about examples of how we've done that, happy to share. Every one of our institutions who has completed a NETCHI accreditation self-study or report over the last several years utilizes this data, among other data, in that response. And because of our aggregate ability to do that for the entire system, we had the foresight to imagine that potential and can do that for our self-study as a unified institution. This also allows, as we face in transitions over the years with campus presidents, the ability to provide a baseline data that allows new presidents to accelerate their progress. And so just a week ago, we had a debrief with a new president who similarly has found this very beneficial and allows us to connect with the leaders who have the ability to promote change. Chancellor Malloy offered a perspective that you can see in the trend report as well as to the value of our ability to focus on our institutional accreditations and to assess our campus cultures and set goals that challenge and commit to our universities, that we focus on our student success excellence and our employees' success excellence. These are some quotes directly from the trend report as well, and they are specifically from President Rebecca White, President Glenn Cummings, and President Ray Rice, all of whom have participated actively in this program. And to be clear, every one of our universities is highlighted in that trend report because all have dedicated time and energy toward this process. And as you can see, this has allowed the ability to highlight our employees, generate focus that's important to their success and therefore our students' success, and that allows us to move forward in our unified accreditation. So thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to, and or President Rice or Doriana Pratt, who are our recipients this year for the University of Maine Presque Isle, may also want to add some comments.
Thank you, Megan. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Trustee Bartholomew, go ahead.
Thanks, Ray. Well, I just had a comment, and that is that even during a pandemic, what a great showing of success when we see you, President Rice, and Megan and the team working so hard to get us on such a admirable location and such a great, the competition for these roles. Is great colleges to work for. Getting an honor roll recipient award is pretty substantial. You have to have significant employee engagement. And I have no doubt that's what's leading to your success at the University of Maine at Presque Isle. So I just wanted to cheer you on for some success that will certainly help us in the future and through the back end of the pandemic. Really great work.
Ray, did you have more comments?
No, I just wanted to thank Megan Clough for we've gone through this evaluation assessment 5 times, and thank her for the support throughout the process. I saw it first as an interim provost, and it terrified me, to be honest. Talk about, Brene Brown talks about being vulnerable. I think in some ways, it's a great tool because you really do have to examine and acknowledge where all of your employees are, faculty, staff, administrators at the institution, and hear that feedback. And I think that formative feedback allowed us to take steps over the past 5 years. And I particularly want to acknowledge Dory Pratt, our campus HR leader, who's been so helpful to myself and all the leadership team and individuals here at the institution to employ this data into everything from our daily operations to our strategic planning processes to the very specific operational plans of individual units at the University of Maine Presque Isle. I think the only thing I would add is David Hume would yell at me for making any sort of cause-effect relationship, but I'm always grateful to hear, positive news from Vice Chancellor Placido about our enrollments and our credit generation. But I think you can see growth in in all of our indicators for student success, whether it's graduation rates, whether it's year-by-year retention rates, whether it's overall credit generation per individual student over that period of time, as well as addressing growth in various demographic areas of our students. But I put that wholly to the work of the faculty and staff and the ownership they feel for their student success at this institution, which I think has just helped lead us to the success that you're seeing from this university. And I think in a unified environment for the University of Maine system, this is just a really critical tool for the type of strategic planning that we'll be looking to do as a system moving forward.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Just want to congratulate President Rice and the entire UMaine Presque Isle team. As a proud alumni of the institution, it is really, it really warms my heart to see all the hard work that Ray has been doing through very difficult times to bring the campus family together, to focus on what we can do together going forward, how to best serve students, and how to make sure that the environment is most welcoming and supportive of the staff. I think when you've got all those things going, the environment that we're operating in is tough. But they say tough times don't last, tough people do. And I think the folks that you have around you, Ray, and the leadership you're providing them to keep them marching forward is really showing. This is just one of the indicators that we could see, but the feeling about the campus, you got the hearts and minds of the team, and it shows. Congratulations on this honor. And I'm not surprised at all that you've earned it, but entirely thrilled for you and your team.
Thank you, Trustee Donnelly. And before we move, other comments about this this issue? Seeing none, I just want to call out this connection to, and it's in President White's comments that are in the presentation that we received. But going back to 2016, when this board adopted a series of strategic initiatives, those of you who were on the board at the time may recall that we had 4 primary and 2 secondary outcomes under which we grouped key initiatives that the system needed to take. And one of those was the university workforce development. And I always feared that was somehow going to be kind of the poor cousin to the other strategic outcomes. And it's just very gratifying to see that system leadership has taken this to heart and has gone ahead and achieved this level of engagement. It benefits our students, it enhances our mission. I just think it's great work, and I want to thank everyone who's been involved in it. And if nothing else on this, I think we're back to Vice Chancellor Placido. You have additional items?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The next presentation is a team effort led by Presidents White and Cummings and their faculty colleagues, Jody Kowski, apologize, Jody, and Emily Newell. The pandemic has created momentum toward quality online learning. Our faculty have adapted quickly, and in doing so have recognized the pitfalls and potential for teaching and learning online. We will build on this opportunity to improve the quality of our online programs. With the D2L successfully implemented, thank you to David Demers and his team, and of course all the faculty that had to participate. We are poised to make great strides. This morning, Representative Daughtry recognized the natural reputation of our exceptional faculty, and Senator Millett said that we have a laser focus on quality learning. I agree with both of those statements and thank them. So Mark, this presentation is the first in a series of actions and discussions we will take this year to raise our already high standards in providing quality online programs. President Cummings, would you like to start?
No, thank you, Vice Chancellor. I introduced this in part because several people on a weekly basis will ask me, and I think a couple of you have asked us over the last, particularly over the last year, can online education really be top quality, and can it meet the demands of rigorous, focused education that the Vice Chancellor just talked about? What this presentation does is it shows you just what a high quality online experience actually looks like. We also get questions I think from students sometimes who say, I really wanted to be in person. I even want discounts because I'm online. Our response is that no, there are definitely, it's a different delivery system, but the quality can be very good, and some of the data actually shows that. There are all over the system. Online education has been a hallmark of almost every university. UMA, particularly in the last few decades, USM have had a long history of online education. And we hope to be able to show you what it sort of on a 1 to 10 scale, what a 9 or 10 looks like with Dr. Kozakowski and Dr. Newell's work today. I just wanted to thank particularly our CTEL director, our Center for Technology Enhanced Learning, Dr. Paul Cochran, as well as Director of Institutional Services, BJ Kitchen from UMA, for helping us. We prepared over the course of the fall, over the last couple months to prepare for you a document, really some kind of evidence of what does it look like? And I think hopefully this helps you when you're out there talking to the public, as I know many of you do, when the question about quality education online, this might give you some ideas of just how good it can be, and hopefully strengthen all our understanding and confidence in delivery services this way. In fact, most of our growth on graduate studies here this year has been because of our online presence. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kozakowski, Jody Kozakowski from UMA, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, everybody. And for this opportunity, I'm going to just share my screen. So good day. My name is Jody Kozakowski. It is hard to pronounce, I do agree. I am the coordinator and a faculty member in the Information and Library Science program at UMA, and I've served in that role for 17 years. For more than 20 years, I've been helping students, faculty, and administration think about teaching and learning using technology at the undergraduate and graduate levels. So if there are 3 themes I can help you consider within this brief presentation, they are how teaching techniques and technology can help students make connections which lead to success. So from a program perspective, we will consider how various approaches to teaching and learning coupled with technology used to engage and support students online can transform this digital connection with our students into this. So online learning can sometimes indeed feel impersonal and less rich than face-to-face learning, but it can also be more personal, create stronger learners engaged with their university and communities, and can connect our students with content, new approaches to learning, and support them in achieving their goals. Consider this. At some point during their time at UMA, 99% of our students will take a class online. And before I go into some specific examples to help you understand how we work in a completely online program with our students, a few things about us. We consider technology to be a tool, when used effectively, can open windows on the world and bring people together. It can remove barriers to teaching and learning. It can connect us for common goals. It can expose us to other cultural realities. After working all day at the only library on her island and finishing her homework, the student is clearing land in the jungle with her family to build a home. Online learning can help us understand we are not so different. Dr. Tamara Blesh travels around the world building school libraries in various countries. We are a program of 2 full-time faculty and 6 adjuncts. Our adjuncts are information professionals around Maine and the United States. So for us, online learning is a shared journey with our students. We are the facilitators, constructing engaging assignments, presenting an organized course interface, and bringing together various forms of materials for students to interact with and learn from. We provide grades and feedback on assignments typically within 1 week and respond to emails within 24 hours. We may have written lectures, short videos of under 10 minutes, audio files, interactive graphics, along with your typical textbook and articles. Our students interact and connect with content, classmates, and our campus using various technologies. Our assignments are active in nature. We use very few quizzes or timed exams, and most work is project and case study based. So the ILS program. We currently have 167 online students in our program. 39% are in-state, 60% out of state, and 1% international. And being online has allowed our program to survive and serve our students in Maine while broadening perspectives through shared global experiences. The ILS program has been available online for 24 years. Graduates of our program go on to earn advanced degrees and obtain employment at places like the FDA, the Boston Athenaeum, Portland Public Library, UMA, Northern Maine Community College, Bates, the Maine State Library, Kennebec Historical Society, just to name a few. So whether it's a student applying for and receiving a programming grant at the Lawrence Public Library in Fairfield, Maine, or a student who is working to create a cultural center and document repository in Nevada for her Shoshone tribe, this is what active learning and community engagement means to us. So let me take a step back and consider what online learning is in general. In a very basic sense, online teaching and learning uses technology and the internet to deliver education. A learner logs into a website to retrieve materials, watch videos, and post assignments. This is what my K through 12 kids did this spring as everyone pivoted online during the pandemic. It was likely not as rich nor robust as a typical online class or program can be. So what is online learning for us? For the ILS program, it's a collaborative approach using technology to connect our students to the content we design, to connect students with our wider campus and available resources, and to connect students with their classmates through shared assignments and discussion. And then it's also helping students make those broad connections outside the classroom to the communities in which they live. So how do we know our approach is working to engage and develop communities of learners? When students come in from around Maine and the world to celebrate and meet their faculty and classmates at graduation, usually for the first time in person, it feels more like a reunion than a first-time meeting, one of our administrators has noted. When we see our students engage in their respective communities through projects and advocacy with local libraries, this is Dan Norton, who was engaged in the Occupy Wall Street movement, and then an invited speaker to the National Library Association conference, which is a pretty big deal. Our faculty typically meet once a month, and this is not just our full-time faculty, it's all of our wonderful adjuncts. And we include at least one graduate of our program who can attend the meetings. So here is a high-level philosophy of our approach and then some specific examples. We work to meet and support students where they are, intellectually, cognitively, geographically, and skill level. And we allow tailoring of assignments to student interests and learning or career goals. So how do we do this? In this assignment, students locate a job announcement for their dream job. We review the qualifications and skill sets, and then students build a roadmap in consideration of applying for that position. This includes listing skills they have as well as desired strengths, noting the degrees and experience needed, their value proposition, and defining their limits and boundaries. Lastly, students develop concrete objectives and identify possible networking opportunities to help them achieve their goals. In this slide, we see students can present the information in a way that's meaningful to them. The work can be high tech, such as the complex concept map on the right, or with a pencil and paper, as long as it meets the assignment outcomes. So bringing it back to meeting students where they are. Some of our students live in remote areas of places like North Dakota or here in Maine and cannot access an archive or historical society. So we send them either physical objects to interact with or digital documents like these, a collection of private papers that students will review and create a finding aid for in order to make them accessible. So the ILS faculty present different ways for learners to acquire information and build knowledge, and allow students to express and demonstrate that learning in creative ways. This next example is an information science assignment where we consider what an image is of, the specific concrete description, versus what an image is about, that interpretational component that's filtered through the lens of our experiences. Students look for an advertisement and describe the concrete of, and then discuss the interpretational about. This assignment is all about our interpretations and what we bring to the table as humans with different experiences and understanding. We discuss the use of visual images and graphics to effectively convey information with less cognitive load, and the use of images to influence. In another assignment, students watch videos, read, and explore the concept of information overload and how it makes them feel. And then we have a brief exercise to practice mindfulness. Students can then use a visual presentation or just a journal entry to share the concepts they have learned from both parts of the unit. So here's some feedback I received from a student after they recently graduated. I scoffed at having to think outside the box, but my first course with Jody took me there. I was pretty set in my ways after being in school off and on since 1978. In my first course, I learned how to make word bubbles and a goal mind map, and then near the end, silent mindfulness. Goodness, did I ever balk at that silent assignment, but honestly, it ended up rocking. And then the last area we will consider in this presentation is our focus on the learning outcomes. So how do we know our students are bringing it all together and demonstrating their learning? In so many fields, as you know, experience, practical, applicable knowledge and skills are essential. Internships, jobs, graduate school, volunteering. So here are a few examples of where our students have interned within Maine and beyond, demonstrating what they have accomplished through their online education with UMA. At the United States Naval Observatory Library, Maine Media Workshops Library, PBS, the Chicago Public Library System, and the New York Times. And then lastly, but sometimes most importantly, assisting students with their individual needs, like learning and working with each individual to support them through challenges or personal crises. So this is M. M started taking classes with us in 2009. She and her family live internationally. She had serious health challenges which affected her ability to concentrate and process information. We worked with her each step of the way to choose classes that would meet her learning needs, made certain ADA accommodations were in place, materials were accessible, had instructors who were willing to have frequent one-on-one video conferences. And I'm proud to say, and I get a little emotional, that after 11 years and one class at a time, M is going to be graduating this fall with UMA. This email from a student about their experience during the pandemic this spring really says it all to me. Firstly, UMA and its teachers have been fantastic about reaching out and being approachable during this unknown time. I've received multiple emails, surveys inquiring about going forward, and opinions surrounding the rest of the course, extensions for current and future assignments, and numerous shows of support. I am very thankful for this compassion, and it makes me very proud to be a student here. So these examples all focus within the ILS program, but we certainly do not operate alone. Every office on our campus contributes to supporting all our UMA students. And what I love about UMA and why I have worked here for 17 years is because I believe in what we do, how we work as a team to support our students. We don't hand a student off to find an answer to their question. We ask the question alongside so we can learn and better serve our students. For example, our wonderful advising department, we work with various students and programs, and each program has an advising liaison that helps support our students. In the ILS program, we work with Lori Ficker, who is amazing. She may provide guidance on testing, general education requirements, or she may recommend classes in the University of Maine system that will best fit a student's learning needs and our program. And then Lori, in turn, helps us think about scheduling and student support in the ILS program from a broader perspective. The core truth to highlight here is that we work together. This is just one quotation from a graduate. I have been to lots of bricks and mortar schools, and not one of them can compare to the support I got at UMA. I felt more connected here than any school I actually was physically present at. And again, our approach to education is all about the student, the learning, and transforming online teaching and learning from this into this. Thank you for your time and letting me share with you today just a little bit of who we are in the ILS program and what we do here.
Thank you, Jody. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Newell, who is an assistant professor of sports management here at USM.
All right, Jody, I think you have to stop sharing your screen before I can
Hold on. Yep.
add mine up.
I lost a control here. There we go.
All right. So good morning and thank you for having me here. My name is Dr. Emily Newell and I'm an assistant professor of sport management in the School of Business here at USM. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about how we can promote engagement in online education. Giving you just a quick overview of some of the strategies I'm going to discuss today. First, we're going to look at Universal Design Learning, or UDL, which is a set of principles that help promote inclusive education, both in the in-person and online classroom. And then we're going to look at some active technologies that can help promote engagement in the online classroom and how we use group learning online to help promote community development. So a quick overview of UDL. There are three main groupings of principles when it comes to UDL: engagement, representation, and action expression. When we start with engagement, this looks at, learners differ markedly in the ways in which they can be engaged or motivated for learning. There's not one means of education and engagement that will be optimal for all. And so it's important for us as educators to make sure that we're providing different contexts in which learners can learn. Second, learners differ in the ways that they perceive and comprehend information. So when we're presenting to them, what we say is then interpreted different ways by each learner. So there's not one means of representation that is ideal. So it's important for us to provide different ways of representing what we're teaching in the classroom through videos, different websites, presentations, discussions, and other ways there. And then finally is action and expression, which is really going to be a big focus in this presentation. And that's the idea that the way that learners are able to show what they've learned is going to be different. If we're relying simply on quizzes, tests, and papers, then we're really just testing to make sure that students can take quizzes, tests, and write papers, as opposed to whether they've actually comprehended the information that we're helping and hoping that they take away from our courses. So, how do we take these principles and then use them to promote engagement in the online classroom? UDL means that students have a variety of ways to consume information that they're charged with learning, whether it be by providing readings, video lectures, and demonstrations. Students are presented with the material in a variety of manners. Students also have a variety of options in which to be able to express their learning. So not just making a class based off of a midterm and a final exam or a final paper or presentation. Learners of all types have assignments that they can find engaging and be successful at. So making sure that we're using a wide variety of assignments throughout the semester. It allows for greater flexibility and creativity. So we're not just teaching to a rubric or checklist, but really allowing some flexibility to demonstrate learning. It can showcase creativity in a multitude of ways. And so an example of how I've used this in a course previously is instead of a paper only option, students can write that paper, they can give oral presentations, record a podcast version of their research, or create some sort of video that explains their project. So now I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about active technology and give you a few examples of how active technology can be used in the online classroom. We'll start with Google Docs. Google Docs and with Google Slides are the screenshot here. It allows for real-time collaboration between the students and the instructor. So a lot of times when I have students working in an online classroom, they'll be on Google Docs that I have access to so that I can see and ensure that students are working and engaging while they're on Zoom together, provide feedback, etc. And we can also add and bring information together as a class. So really have that collaborative learning environment. Next is VoiceThread. This allows the instructor to post a question and then students are able to voice record responses. So instead of getting the discussion board where it's just, yes, I agreed, I disagree, good post, good job, it really becomes maintaining an active dialogue and students get to hear one another instead of being just a faceless number in an online classroom. Next, we have Microsoft Teams, which I love for two reasons. First, being in the School of Business, it's a business technology that students are getting exposure to before potentially using it in their eventual jobs. So in sport management, a lot of the employers that we work with, especially now, are using Teams since they're out of the office and not working there, but just for collaboration in general. But I like that it allows real-time collaboration and communication for virtual projects because I do find that group work and group projects are still vital to maintaining that community in an online setting. But it eliminates kind of that back and forth email communication where you reply all and someone doesn't reply all. That can become kind of passive and cumbersome. And then finally, I'm going to discuss Kahoot. This is a system that kind of gamifies the learning process and experience for students. Students can use Kahoot on their own. I can put together exam reviews, or there's a number of different situations where we can turn learning into a game experience for users and something that makes it more active for them than just filling out an exam review or reviewing the book on their own. So finally, I'm going to discuss the use of small groups in online learning and how they can be used to create sub-communities of engagement. So I have these two graphics on my screen. And in the upper graphic is the idea of the whole class coming together in a Zoom session, which I think is sometimes what we think of as what it looks like when we're moving an online or an in-person class online. And people are talking over one another and it can be hard to manage. The idea is to move into small groups in that lower picture where you have smaller groups of students working together to share the learning and build a community. The goal is to have consistent project and discussion groups throughout the semester. So they might have a couple different sets of groups, but students are working and building kind of that rapport and trust with one another for discussion and project groups, which allows them to work more fluidly. We also use the learning assistant model for peer collaboration. I'm not the only one at USM that does that. We have a pretty robust program here where a peer who has taken the class in a previous semester is a part of our class. I have Nick this semester who really works to help give students feedback. A lot of times he might get questions that students are afraid or intimidated to ask me, but he's someone that did well in the class before and is able to continue to provide peer feedback and kind of model that collaboration. It allows for scaffolded assignments to build up to bigger assignments. So throughout the semester, we're working on what I call mini assignments to help lead to the final project in these small groups. So groups are getting drafts and feedback and constant engagement with one another and with the instructor. And it also just builds these smaller communities within a high enrollment online class. So where students feel like they might disappear if there's a group of 50 students, when you're breaking that into smaller groups and myself as the instructor and the LA are able to pop around, work with smaller groups, it allows us to develop those connections better and learn more about one another. So to bring it all together, I brought in a few student opinions that I've gathered from student evaluations and emails of how learning comes together in the online classroom. So someone said, I really liked the setup of this course and thought the mini assignments were a good way to lead up to the final project. And I liked how all of the work put into the mini assignments were used on our final. I enjoyed this project, and although we had a difficult transition to online classes, this was this spring, I feel like we were able to handle it relatively smoothly by using groups. I love how our little assignments became a 43-page marketing plan and a full website. It's so cool to work on and understand all of the little components and then see it come together. Group projects for an online class can be frustrating, but I think the way we use technology in this class made it easier than I've experienced before. And I'm excited for the semester since your classes and teaching style match up with the way that I learn. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for your time today. And if anybody has any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Newell. And thank you also to Dr. Koskowski for their presentations today. I think that you can see how you can take something that is more similar to a Zoom meeting and change it into both an asynchronous or a synchronous learning experience using technology online. And these two professors gave us a good taste of what that looks like for our students and can show how engaging it can be. And I can personally attest, having been invited and attended many of Jody Kozakowski's receptions that she holds for her students on the day before graduation. It is the first time most of them ever visit our campus in Augusta, and you wouldn't know it because they all seem to know each other when they walk in the room. The hugs and the smiles and the fact that they would travel to come to our campus from other states and in some cases other countries in order to come together in that culminating experience of commencement just shows what you can do with engagement even across technology. And it's also important to remember that even if you're teaching in a face-to-face environment, technology can really enhance learning in many ways, including facilitating small groups. And we're very fortunate at UMA, and I know at USM and at other institutions within our systems, to have departments that work with faculty to help them learn those tools and technologies and the pedagogies that are most effective for engaging students. And so I just want to thank two people who you didn't get to see today who helped us with this presentation, BJ Kitchen, who is the Director of Instructional Services here at UMA and oversees our Faculty Development Center, and Paul Cochran, who is the Executive Director of Digital Learning Strategy at USM and oversees CTEL, or the Center for Technology Enhanced Learning at USM. The folks that work in these offices are wonderful. I work with them myself as an adjunct faculty member, and they've saved me on many, many occasions. For any faculty who have not tried something different in their courses or would like to try something different in their courses, I really urge you to reach out. Paul and BJ's teams are also frequent contributors to the faculty conference that is held annually to particularly showcase many faculty across the system in their use of technology to enhance engaged learning. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Placido in case there are any questions or comments.
Thank you, President Cummings and Wyke. We are certainly fortunate for the deep experience that you and your teams have in this area. So, and thank you again for all your time providing us this presentation. I think it sets the foundation for the rest of the year and years to come to what I expect to be great success in this area. Chair Irwin, that's all I have for my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Placido. Do any board members have comments or questions with regard to the online learning presentations?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Trustee
Michaud. Yep, as someone who just finished my Master Garden volunteer class last week, I can tell you the experience online has been very interesting. As most of the class are non-traditional students, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work with the master gardening class, but I can tell you that Kate Garland, who taught the class, did an excellent job. The fact that it was a different type of venue, she actually took the time at the beginning when we started going through the Zoom meetings to spend an hour with each of the students personally to find out what the problems are, how can they make it an enjoyable experience and one that the students can learn. And I can tell you that it was a different experience, but it was a very rewarding experience. And I want to commend everyone who's actually on the university side for all that they're doing to help make education a learning, but also a fun experience at the same time. So kudos to everyone on the university side for that. So.
Thank you, Trustee Michaud. Other questions or comments?
Chair Irwin?
Yes, Trustee Doak.
I've always said the greatest gift to education from technology was the online course. And it opened up doors for many people that never had an opportunity to get onto a college campus. We're seeing the same thing now in Maine high schools and Maine school systems. So I think the face-to-face and the online platform must be parallel systems from here on out that really will help serve the needs of all the learners across the state of Maine. So thank you for the work that University of Augusta and University of Southern Maine have been doing in this endeavor. Great job.
Thank you, Trustee Doak. Anyone else? Any non-board members have questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Placido. Thank you, Presidents White and Cummings, and our presenters. This is, those of us who have been on the board for a while have been kind of thirsting for really good insight into how online education works and how, as a system, we are taking the expertise that existed in pockets and making it more broadly available. I suspect the pandemic has catalyzed a bit of action in that regard. It's very good to see these presentations and know that the expertise that we have is in fact available to be shared across the system when we need it so much. So all in all, I think this is excellent information and very comforting to see that we're moving forward in this area in this manner. So thank you all for that. Next up, we're going to move on to our action items. We have a fairly robust list, so bear with me. I will probably stumble as I read as fast as possible to get us through this because there's a lot of resolutions, but I certainly don't want to short circuit any discussion or questions by board members, but we'll move as fast as we can. First up is tab 3 is tenure at the time of hire. This is for Provost John Bowen at the University of Maine. And the resolution is that the Board of Trustees approves tenure at the rank of Professor of Forest Resources at the University of Maine to Dr. John Bowen to be effective at the time of hiring. I'll ask for a motion and a second and then see if there's any discussion.
So moved.
Second.
By Trustee Riley, seconded by?
It was me. I'm looking.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Collins,
Yes.
Trustee Doak,
Yes.
Trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
Trustee Ames,
Yes.
Trustee Irwin.
Yes.
I don't believe Commissioner Macon's on the line. Trustee Eustace,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Mishu,
Yes.
Trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Next up, item 4, tab 4, tenure at the time of hire for Associate Professor of Computer Science at the University of Maine at Presque Isle, Dr. Rafiul Hassan. So the text of the resolution is that the Board of Trustees approves tenure at the rank of Associate Professor of Computer Science at the University of Maine at Presque Isle to Dr. Rafiul Hassan to be effective at the time of hiring. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Riley.
Second.
Second.
Got it, okay.
Dope.
It's been moved and seconded, and any discussion on this before we take a vote? All right, hearing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Joe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
trustee Ames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes?
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. Next up is tab 5. This is a proposed revision to board policy 205 with regard to faculty and student representation to the Board of Trustees. This was before you in July as an information item. The purpose of this resolution and policy change is to allow faculty and student representatives from the University of Maine School of Law. So the resolution is that the Board of Trustees approves the proposed changes as outlined to Board of Trustees Policy 205, faculty and student representatives to the Board of Trustees. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
By
Seconded.
trustee Eustace, seconded by trustee Bartholomew. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Joe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes?
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. We're now to tab 6. Tab 6 is proposed revisions to Board of Trustee Policy 402. Excuse me, sex discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual assault, relationship violence, stalking, retaliation, and Title IX sexual harassment. This was also before the board as an information item in July, so this is the second appearance and it's ready for action. What I would like to do, I guess, is ask Chief General Counsel Phelan to just, if you could give us just a brief summary of what's before us and then remind us as to why we need to do this, and then we'll move to the resolution.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Irwin. And I want to remind board members, as the chair just noted, this matter was first brought to the board as an information item in July when we explained that because of new regulations issued by the U.S. Department of Education regarding Title IX, which were issued in May, there were substantial revisions to the system's Title IX policies that were required to come into compliance with those new regulations by August 14th, which was the compliance date. We had some discussion at the board meeting in July about how to manage coming into compliance, understanding that we would have to fairly substantially revise some policies that required board approval. Ultimately, in July, we decided that we would call a special meeting of the board's executive committee, which was scheduled for August 13th. the day before our compliance deadline, at which time we presented the revisions to the board policy that were minimally necessary to come into compliance with the federal Title IX regulations. I want to pause there and note that we're also coming into a regular 3-year cycled review of our overall student conduct code. That has started as well and will lead to further changes in student conduct policies. But what was before the board's executive committee on August 13th, again, were the changes that we believed were minimally necessary to comply with the new federal Title IX regulations. Board members participating in that executive committee meeting will recall that we had a relatively detailed discussion and presentation by Liz Lavoie, who is present with us here today, on the changes to the Title IX policies and procedures that were made. The executive committee did act on August 13th to adopt those changes, understanding though that it would come back before the entire board here at this regularly scheduled meeting for a complete vote of ratification of those changes. That's why we're here today. Again, I do want to note that we have Liz Lavoie, our system Title IX Director of Title IX Services. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce as well the system's Deputy General Counsel who started with us just 2 weeks ago. Her name's Laurel Heil. I'm not sure where she shows up on your Zoom screen, but she is present here. So they are here with me to answer any questions that remain about the board's adoption of these policy changes. I want to note 2 other things. Again, Liz is free to summarize those if anybody would like to hear that. I also want to acknowledge concerns that Trustee Eames raised at the executive committee meeting, that there is indeed a tension between what universities are required to do to provide process to both complainants and respondents in Title IX sex assault cases that are sometimes in tension with a prosecutor's obligations to prosecute sex crimes. We have had ongoing engagement with Trustee Eames and a number of DAs around the state to make sure that we have an open line of communication between our universities who are managing these cases and what responsibilities the prosecutor's offices have in the various counties where we operate. And I certainly welcome or invite any comment that Trustee Eames or anyone else has on that point in particular. But I do want to note for the board that we have an ongoing commitment to regular communication with Trustee Eames and the DA community to make sure that we understand those tensions as we meet our Title IX obligations in the university environment. So I'll pause there and invite comment from Trustee Eames. And then if anyone has questions for our Title IX or legal team here, happy to answer those as well.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to everyone in the Title IX office for working with me and with the DAs on the recognized tension. I recognize a lot of work has gone into these revisions. There are aspects of this policy, particularly as it relates to hearings, that I don't agree with. Because I believe that victims are at risk of being re-victimized by this process, but I also understand we are bound by the Department of Education regulations. I just want to encourage everyone involved in the hearing process just to be sensitive to what I see as the re-victimization of victims, or the possibility of that, particularly as it relates to sexual harassment and sexual assault. So I just encourage you to be sensitive to that, but I just want to thank everyone for their attention to my concerns and their willingness to work with the DAs and myself. And I certainly will be voting yes on this because I understand it is necessary to do so.
Thank you, Trustee Eames. Other board members wish to be heard about this? Seeing none, and anyone other than board members?
This is Liz from Title IX. Trustee Eames, I just want to say that we are committed to providing support for victims and for any person going through the process, and we'll continue to support those, and especially during their challenge of the process. And want to thank you for recognizing that.
Okay, that looks like Liz. So thank you, Liz. Okay, with any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Trustee Eames. Speaks for, I think, a lot of our concerns, except with actual legal knowledge, unlike myself, but with the same set of concerns. And I just want to thank her for speaking up and being taking such an active role with the team from the system in this. It makes me feel a lot better, and I'll be following her lead with my vote today. But I just want to thank her for that work and time.
Thank you, Trustee Kane.
Thank you, Emily.
If there's nothing else, I will read the text of the resolution and call for a motion. The resolution is that the Board of Trustees ratifies the Executive Committee's August 13, 2020 approval of the proposed revisions to Board Policy 402 to ensure University of Maine system is in compliance with the United States Department of Education Title IX regulations as of August 14, 2020. Could I have a resolution, please? I'm sorry. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Eames.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Michaud. Any final discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Collins,
Yes.
Trustee Joe,
Yes.
Trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
Trustee Eames,
Yes.
Trustee Irwin,
Yes.
Trustee Eustace,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Michaud,
Yes.
Trustee Riley,
Yes.
Trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you all. Now, next is tab 8, which is a resolution for Kay Kimball.
Tab 7.
I'm sorry.
Tab 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are right. Tab 7. We'll get to Kay in a moment. Tab 7 is confirmation of faculty and student representatives to the board. And for this, I'm going to ask President Farini Mundy, since both of these representatives relate to her domain, if she could introduce this to the board.
Thank you, Chair Irwin. We have two new representatives to present to you from the University of Maine at Machias for faculty representative, and we thanked Heather Ball earlier this morning. We propose William Otto. Dr. Otto is a professor of chemistry in his 20th year at the University of Maine at Machias. He coordinates the Bachelor of College Studies program right now. He also has been chair of the Environmental and Biological Sciences Division, and his focus has been on improving STEM student success and retention. William is an environmental analytical chemist, and he focuses on local issues of ocean acidification and the Down East rivers. And he's very engaged across the campus in a variety of initiatives. As a student representative, we nominate Emma Jones, class of 22. She's a junior majoring in psychology and community studies, minoring in counseling. Emma will graduate in the spring of 22 and plans to go to graduate school for a master's degree in psychology. She has worked in the Student Senate at the University of Maine at Machias and has enjoyed that opportunity to improve her leadership skills, actively has sought the opportunity to be in this new role, would like to work with children either in a school or clinical setting when she finishes, feels strongly about the importance of representation of students. So I do hope you will consider the nominations for Dr. Otto and for Ms. Jones.
Thank you, President Farini Mundy. The text of the proposed resolution is that the Board of Trustees approves the appointments of the faculty and student representatives to the Board of Trustees as presented. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
By Trustee Kane, seconded by
Jim Donnelly.
Trustee Donnelly. Thank you both. Any final questions, comments before we take a vote? Seeing none, we'll call the roll, please.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Joe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes?
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you. Now, tab 8. So, most or all of you know Kay Kimball, and it's unfortunately because of the effects of COVID, we haven't been able to convene physically the last few times. And unfortunately, again, we are honoring someone who is retiring. We can't shake hands, we can't acknowledge in person, but this is a richly deserved recognition by the board on the part of, on behalf of Dr. Kimball for the work that she has done. We acknowledged her work at the University of Maine at Machias a few years ago, and now we're going to acknowledge her work in her most recent position of Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. So I am going to, if I may, I'm going to read the following motion. Whereas Karen K.S. Kimball has served the University of Maine system since 1999, whereas she served in her most recent position of Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs from August 13, 2018 to her retirement on October 1st, 2020. Whereas her leadership has been instrumental with the development of the academic integrity policy and submission of multiple grants. Whereas the Chief Academic Officers Council has been successful in completing many projects in large part due to Dr. Kimball's management and attention to detail. Whereas the University of Maine system early college program has thrived due to her leadership and collaborative approach. Whereas Dr. Kimball is acknowledged for her stellar work with the University of Maine system unified accreditation, including a key contributor to the drafting process for the substantive change document for unified accreditation submitted to the New England Commission of Higher Education. And whereas she exemplifies the traits of a great leader and colleague, she is genuine, intelligent, hardworking, thoughtful, caring, and inspirational. The University of Maine system has benefited from Dr. Kimball's leadership, and she will be truly missed. Be it known to all that we, the University of Maine System Board of Trustees, offer our most sincere gratitude, thanks, and best wishes for retirement to Kay Kimball for her outstanding contributions to the quality of higher education in Maine. Approved this 28th day of September 2020 by the grateful University of Maine System Board of Trustees, acting as stewards of Maine's public universities and their 30,000 students, 5,000 employees, and more than 200,000 living alumni. Could I have a motion for that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Collins, seconded by trustee Donnelly. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Any comments before we vote the resolution?
Chair, I just want to thank Dr. Kimball for being the right person at the right time during two critical points in the University of Maine system. Her leadership at Machias was amazing and made it possible to have that strategic partnership that was so necessary to get the scale for Machias to continue forward. And it was exemplary. And also her needed leadership as Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs during a period of time that was critical. So having the history of being present during both those periods of time, I just want to thank her for her leadership and being the right person at the right time. Well, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Collins. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Yes, please, Chancellor.
I just want to say that it has been a great honor to work with Kay over the last 15 months. Her contributions to unified accreditation were nothing short of spectacular. She was a road warrior as well with me on the road as we visited, and her wonderful demeanor and her great intelligence and her kindness showed throughout. And I want to say thank you very much, Kay, for the wonderful work you've done on behalf of our students, faculty, staff. Our institutions are better for your care.
Thank you, Chancellor. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll simply echo the comments of Trustee Collins and the Chancellor. And we will miss you, Kay, for certain. And now we'll call for a vote.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Joe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly. You might be on mute.
Yes.
Trustee Ames,
Yes, and congratulations, Kay.
trustee Irwin,
Yes.
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes, congratulations, Kay.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. I'm just sorry that we're not in the same place, so I can hand you the resolution.
Can I just,
So- Yes, please.
I just want everybody to know how humbled and grateful I am for this. I don't know if you can tell my voice is a little shaky. I'm truly touched. It has been a wonderful opportunity to work with such terrific colleagues, caring colleagues who value the work we do. And I truly appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Okay, tab 9 is the renaming of a building at the on the University of Maine campus, or rather a building name removal from the University of Maine campus. And I think the board you've read the materials, you understand the issue, and I'm going to turn this over to President Farini Monday to give us a presentation to set up our consideration of the resolution.
Thank you, Chair Irwin. I'm very, very pleased to have the chance to talk to the entire board about this proposal, and appreciate the very careful work and thinking that has already been done by the board about this. I also would like to introduce members of the task force. I can't see if they're there with us, but Dr. Kenda Shealy, Dr. Liam Reardon, and Ms. Haley Sedor may join I see Haley. Great. They were integral to the report that was produced on June 23rd in 2020 that recommends the renaming of C.C. Little Hall. And I know you've looked at this and have thought about these issues. I'll just very briefly remind everyone that Clarence Cook Little was president of UMaine from 1922 to 1925, and the hall was named for him in a ceremony in June of 1966 as a result of action taken by the Board of Trustees of the university. The building continues today with offices for psychology and modern languages and classics. It has some of the largest lecture halls on campus and a prominent location on the mall. Little made an enduring and positive contribution to science. He did genetic research, and he was a key figure in the founding of Jackson Laboratory. However, he was also a notable figure in the eugenics movement in the United States, which sanctioned the identification and forced sterilization of individuals with undesirable characteristics. He was also the lead expert in the tobacco industry's attempts to hide the link between smoking tobacco and cancer. So after significant deliberation, this committee has recommended, and I endorse their recommendation, that we remove C.C. Little's name from this building and move forward with a proposal coming to you in the future for a new name for the hall. I would say that a point I wish to make very clearly is that this is not in any way meant to be a sanitization of the past. We acknowledge this piece of our past. It's a piece of the history of the University of Maine. And history allows us, on looking back, to learn more about current times and to learn about ourselves. So we do have a plan for material to be posted in the hall when it is renamed, to acknowledge that what its name was for that period. President Little's portrait still hangs in the library of the University of Maine. I do see that Professor Reardon has joined us, a historian who was vital in the work of that subcommittee. And so again, I thank you for your consideration of this, and certainly we can answer your questions as you have them.
Thank you, President Friedi-Mundy. Let's start with discussion. Are there any questions, comments by any members of the board?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Kane.
Thank you very much. I think that because the full board was not at the FFT committee meeting, I think we had a really great discussion about this at that committee meeting, about the importance and the desire to remove the name and the thoughtful process that this committee went through. This was not something arrived at quickly or without great thought, and that we actually updated the resolution in the FFT committee to have the board take a broader look at this report and the factors it considered, so that we can look at our own policies as a board across the whole system as we take into account different factors in the naming and renaming, or unnaming in this case, of various buildings throughout the system in a go forward way, that we really wanted to make it not just about this building, but what we can learn from this experience and this process to benefit the system in the long run, as we think about who we are and how we want to be presented through buildings. And I just want to again thank the committee. The report is extremely comprehensive and very thoughtful. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kane. Other comments, questions?
I'll again support Emily's comments, Trustee Kane's comments. I went into this kind of open-minded, and the more I read and learned about the thoughtful process that the committee went through, and the painstaking deliberateness about how to consider these things and the past, and balancing things out in the way we go forward, it gives us an opportunity to look at how and why and how contemporarily we, maybe I'm coining a phrase, we look at naming buildings. So we have some time between somebody being there and being gone. So I'm fully in support of this move, and I believe that the committee did a thoughtful and thorough job in getting us to this point. And I want to thank them for taking the time and effort to go through this in that fashion.
Thank you, Trustee Donnelly, sorry. Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I would just like to make a comment. Trustee Gardner is unfortunately not able to be here today. And he and I have spoken at some length about this in terms of setting the board up for the future, for future considerations of this. But let me start by commending President Friedi-Mundy and the University of Maine, and in particular the task group that worked on this question, for the process that it followed in coming to the board with this request. It was thorough, it was thoughtful, fully in keeping with the best traditions of scholarship and open and fair inquiry. And I think the board should be very grateful for that. I'm certainly persuaded that the proposal to remove C.C. Little's name from the building on the University of Maine campus is meritorious, and I will support it. I don't see this as an exercise in revisionism, which I might well resist, but much more a correction of a mistake that should have been recognized as such in 1966. But it does raise a larger question, and it's one I don't think the board is particularly well prepared for. Because Board Policy 803 is very general, and it contains really no guiding principles by which we would consider requests to remove names our predecessors have chosen to recognize in the past, and I'm hoping that we can correct that. I think these principles need to address that As fiduciaries for a public institution of higher education, the board has to be open to the constant evolution of knowledge and understanding. And while many facts of our past, what people did, what they said, or what they failed to do or say, may be immutable, history is certainly not. And as new information emerges and new interpretations follow, we acknowledge that our understanding of history is subject to constant change. This particular question arises at a time of great intensity in our nation, and we need to be immune from the passions of a particular time in making this consideration. I think this proposal has done an excellent job of that. I want us to recognize that as stewards of our institutions, as much as we're stewards of our institutions' future, we are also stewards of their past. And that duty requires us to engage in the reassessment of past judgments of our predecessors with great care and deference to the state of knowledge and understanding and cultural norms of the time in which those decisions were made. Our supporters and donors deserve a high degree of constancy. They make commitments to our institutions, and we need to remember that we make commitments to them as well. So in conjunction with this resolution before you, I would like to appoint an ad hoc working group to develop recommended principles for this purpose. And what we want, I think I've covered what we want these principles to do. And we'll bring them back to you at a future board meeting. I don't think this requires a formal resolution, but I would like to get it. If there's any opposition to this from the board, I would like to know that before we go forward. I will say that Vice Chair Gardner and Professor Liam Reardon have agreed to be part of this. I need to fulfill this with a couple more people. I need another board member, and I would like someone with development or advancement expertise as we try to round this out, which I'll do in the weeks ahead. But I wanted the board to understand that the action that I would take to do that comes from the discussion that we had, as Trustee Kane alluded to, at the FFT meeting, where we had an extensive discussion of this. So with that, I guess I would, if any board member thinks differently about having a group look at this and come back to us with some recommendations, and I would add, building heavily on the work that was done by the group that looked at the CC Little situation at the University of Maine, please let me know. Okay, I don't see any, and so thank you for that. And with that, I will read the text of the proposed resolution. So the resolution is that.
I'm sure. I just want to clarify one thing you said, if you don't mind. Sorry to interrupt you. I think you said in your description of what we're doing, you talked about being immune from the passions of a particular time. And I just want to say that I think it's not about being immune, it's about being sort of aware of what is driving the passions of a particular time, because they are in fact exactly why we're having this conversation, is because of the enlightenment. I think that a lot of people around the country are going through at very different paces. That we have to, that I think, I just want to understand, I think what you were trying to say is that not that we shouldn't pay attention to them or be aware of them, but rather we need to think about the long-term implications of those passions and that enlightenment that I think communities, not just in Maine, but around the country, are going through. And I wanted to say that I think an ad hoc group is a great idea for the board.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Kane. Let me clarify. What I'm driving at is I don't think we should be driven by passion. We need to be driven by a thoughtful, deliberative process. And so I totally agree that we need to be aware of the sensitivities and the issues that drive people's passions around issues that could implicate one of these, a building name or some other aspect of our system. But my point was simply that we should not be we should not act on passion alone. That's my point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that, I would like to read the resolution, which is that acting under Section 6 of Board Policy 803, the Board of Trustees approves the recommendations of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee to, 1, authorize the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine to remove Clarence C. Little's name from the building on the University of Maine campus, which bears his name, and 2, charge a board working group to consider the factors relied on by the C.C. Little Hall Name Task Force in its June 23rd, 2020 report and recommendations for this name change, and determine whether these factors or others should be expressly incorporated into Board Policy 803 to guide the board's consideration of future naming recommendations of this nature. So could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Riley.
Seconded.
I'll give that to Trustee Bartholomew because his light came on. Thank you. Any final discussion before we take a vote? Okay, hearing none. Clerk, will please call the roll.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee King,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Doe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes.
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. And now we are, our final action item is tab 10, which is renaming the Amera Astronomy Building to the Versant Power Astronomy Center. So, and I'm going to again ask President Free Money to just briefly describe this.
Thank you, Chair Irwin. It's important to take note of the juxtaposition of this item with the last item, but this is a naming matter that has been occasioned by the acquisition of Amera by Versant Power. So we are pleased that you've allowed us to bring this before you. I have Dr. Jeff Mills on the line here who can speak more to this if we need him to, but the basic notion here is that we have on the UMaine campus the Amera Astronomy Center, which was launched 20 years ago by Amera Inc. And there's additional history about the naming rights and so forth. But Versant Power, the new lead organization, has requested that we begin the renaming to be consistent with the current business structure. We have had discussions with them underway about various donations that they plan to make, but in many ways, I do see this as a different kind of renaming request to you all, but we have not had the chance to discuss in any detail with you. So thank you for considering this, and Jeff can go into more detail if we need it.
Thank you, President Free Monday. Any questions for President Free Monday or Jeff Mills? Any concerns about bringing this? Yes, Trustee Tim.
I was just going to say that in general, naming rights are expensive, so that it raises the opportunity to think of, not just in this case, but when we have so many different buildings and so many different contributors, what is our policy on naming rights? And I know on civic, like civic centers and other community buildings, the TD Center, that it often comes with the opportunity to do one name change, but not subsequent name changes, or that they're built in what those costs may or may not be. So that I just think it's something that I don't know if we have a specific policy. This strikes me as a one-off situation. But it's something I think that Jeff and others need to think about.
Thank you, Trustee Tim. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm going to read the text of the proposed resolution and then ask for a motion. that the Board of Trustees authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine to rename the Amera Astronomy Center to the Versant Power Astronomy Center. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Donnelly.
Second.
Oh, trustee Misha's light went on, so he gets the second. Any final discussion on this before we take a vote? Okay, seeing none, would you call the roll?
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Doe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes.
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. So that concludes our action item portion of the agenda. We only have a little bit more to go. Next up is the consent agenda. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to trustee Martin, who is serving as the vice chair pro tem today.
Thank you, Chair Irwin. I move the following resolutions as presented and under the appropriate tabs. Tab 11, acceptance of the minutes. September 2, 2020, Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee. Tab 12, Optical Network Equipment Refresh for the Northern Ring, University of Maine System. September 14, 2020, Academic and Student Affairs. Tab 13, New Academic Program Proposal, Bachelors of Science in Elementary Education, USM. Tab 14, New Academic Program Proposal, Bachelors of Science in School Health Education, Physical Education Concentration, UMF. Tab 15, New Academic Program Proposal, Master of Science in Education in Mathematics Education, UMF. Tab 16, New Academic Program Proposal, Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education, UMA. Tab 17, New Academic Program Proposal, Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education, UMA. Tab 18, New Academic Program Proposal, Master of Science in Data Science and Engineering, University of Maine. September 14, 2020, Human Resource and Labor Relations Committee. Tab 19, exception to the Board of Trustees Policy 406, Section 7, Emeritus Status. Could I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Riley. And I'll hand it over to Ellen to do the roll call.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Collins,
Yes.
trustee Doe,
Yes.
trustee Donnelly, trustee Donnelly, trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Irwin,
Yes.
trustee Eustace,
Yes.
trustee Martin,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Tim.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, trustee Martin. And I'll note that trustee Donnelly had to leave us a few minutes ago, so that's why we didn't hear from him. So we've got two discussion items. One, very briefly, I'll just update folks on systems long-range planning team. We have a small group and consisting of 4 trustees, myself, trustee Gardner, see if I get this right, trustee Riley, and trustee Donnelly. And then the chancellor, Vice Chancellor Lowe, Vice Chancellor Placido, and General Counsel Phelan. in the months ahead are going to be having a series of discussions about assisting our campuses in creating alignment around the long-range goals and benefits of unified accreditation, and while addressing the system's kind of long-term financial needs, in both in terms of efficiency and access, affordability, and how we meet our mission in this rapidly changing and uncertain world with challenged resources. So just a quick note to the rest of the board, members of the board, and also to the public, that this process will be unfolding in the months ahead. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chancellor Malloy and Chief of Staff Phelan to bring us up to date on unified accreditation and policy 308.
I'll have Jim speak to the policy 308. I did want to take a moment and speak to the issue of unified accreditation, arguably one of the most important developments in the history of the system since its formation as a system. This has been a vision long pursued, long sought after, and quite frankly arrives at a time that it is keenly needed. I can assure you that ongoing conversations between presidents, our campuses, our universities, really is an ongoing effort to understand how this particular tool will be used, can be incorporated in our long-term and short-term planning, and quite frankly, why it needs to be considered on each act we take on an ongoing basis. Understanding that what we're trying to do is have a system that is optimal and serves all of its constituents well, and an acknowledgement that in the future that may need and require that we work across what were traditional boundaries, our borders, and now understand that what's most important is the success of our students and our ability to provide a superior education at an economical cost. And quite frankly, as we look to perhaps a longer term slowdown in the economy, as we look forward to the difficulties that the state of Maine can reasonably predict it will have, and the changes in budgetary in budgets, both short term and long term, this is an important tool for us to be able to use to guarantee that success. With that, I'll turn it over to Jim, who has been working on this in concert with many others, all of our presidents as well. And as I mentioned, Kay earlier in the role that she played. Jim.
Sure. Thanks, Chancellor Malloy. Just a brief update on what we're doing to prepare for the ongoing engagement with NECHI, the accrediting body on this. And then I'll turn to the policy proposal after that. As the Chancellor noted, there are a number of people working to prepare for the next steps with NECHI. There are two primary next steps, both of which are relatively significant. The latter more significant than the first I'll mention. We will have a visit from a small team by NECHI next spring. No idea yet whether that will be in person or virtual. That will be dependent on the virus. But that first visit is what NECHI refers to as a confirming visit. They will have a small team that will have the substantive change application that we provided to NECHI that describes how we operate and how we intend to govern ourselves in the unified accreditation model. The confirming visit does what the name suggests. They want to see evidence that we actually are operating in the way that we indicated we were and would be under unified accreditation. There will be a report prepared in advance of that highlights the initial steps we've taken under unified accreditation. So we'll have some work that goes into that. We'll have a lot of university level and faculty level input into that report. And then the larger issue, of course, is the self-study and comprehensive evaluation that we've referred to a number of times throughout the time period when unified accreditation went from recommendation to actual proposal to application to NECHI. And that is a 2-year period under which we conduct what's referred to as a self-study. which is a long report demonstrating how we comply with each of the 9 NETCHI standards. That will be a significant effort involving dozens, if not 100 or more people all across our system, faculty, staff, university and system leaders and administrators, some student input in the relevant sections as well. Board of Trustee, faculty and student representatives, our Faculty Governance Council, which is a system-wide council of faculty senate presidents and assembly leaders from around the system, all who will have input and a substantial hand in drafting the report of, again, of how we comply with the NETCHI standards across the system in a unified way. So that work will be significant, and doing the work itself will be positive and constructive for how we operate collaboratively across the system. To that point, I'm going to transition to the policy language that we've presented to you. I would note that because the board's approval of unified accreditation required that we report each meeting of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, we discussed this language with the ASA committee members a couple of weeks ago and had some suggestions that the language in the policy that's before you in the agenda materials could be strengthened if we incorporated unified accreditation principle requirements in any future ongoing work about university mission, strategic planning, and even academic program review and approval. Rather than try to make the change and come up with language that we could discuss with you here today, we decided to write the agenda materials today as an information item with the pledge that we would go back and discuss potential language changes with our presidents, with our faculty, Board of Trustee faculty representatives, student representatives, and others who have an interest in this language, and then bring revisions back to the ASA committee in November when we next meet. So that's our intention. So the language you see in front of you will likely be updated the next time you see it. But as it is only an information item today, we wanted you to be aware of how we intend to work to revise it before you see it again. And Chancellor and Chair Irwin, that's my report, unless there are other questions.
The Chancellor had to, excuse me, the Chair had to step up. There we go. We got him back.
We done? Yeah. Questions. Okay. Did you cover the policy? Okay. Sorry about that. So questions, comments with regard to where we are, in particular with regard to the policy revision, which will come back to you at presumably the November meeting for action. Okay, seeing none. That's the end of our agenda, public agenda for today. The date of the next meeting is November 16, 2020, held via Zoom. And because we do have some matters to take up in executive session, I'll now call for a motion to go into executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA section 4056A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, employment, and duties. 1 MRSA section 4056C to discuss or consider economic development only if premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of the system. And 1 MRSA section 4056E to consult with its attorney concerning legal rights and duties of the university system. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Eames, seconded by Trustee Collins. Call the roll.
Trustee Bartholomew,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Collins,
Yes.
Trustee Joke,
Yes.
Trustee Donnelly, Trustee Eames,
Yes.
Trustee Irwin,
Yes.
Trustee Eustace,
Yes.
Trustee Martin,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Minshew,
Yes.
Trustee Riley,
Yes.
and Trustee Tim.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, so we are now officially in executive session. You could, our plan is to reconvene at 12:30 to actually start an executive session, so people could take a break. And, but please, I don't know whether they should jump now or click now and then.
But there's a separate Zoom link for
Okay,
them to
separate,
dial into.
totally separate meeting then for 12:30.
Yes.
So we will see you all at 12:30. Thank you.